Hey all, this is my third day in California. And I just want to welcome you all to another episode of Not For Nothing. I guess I can consider these the California editions. I am in Upland, California right now in a friend's private studio, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Why don't you, let people know who you are and how long you've been tattooing?
Obie Hughes. I've been tattooing 30-ish years. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. I look back on time, and I don't know if I'm getting old or I just don't really remember exactly when it all started. But it's been about 30 years. Started tattooing in Upland, which is where we work back full circle. Worked under Corey Miller for about a decade. At a couple of different locations with him and the crew over there, and then went out on my own for the last 20 years. I've been out on my own, and I've had 6 or 7 locations since then. A couple of were in Texas for a little bit, and several in the Inland Empire, California area. So
right.
I think this is the 7th location.
7th. So I met you through Jimmy Litwalk in Detroit.
Yeah.
They had like it was like a private, like a small car club group that they were part of.
Yeah.
And you would come out for.
Was that at the car show, the anti-blessing or whatever, or not anti-blessing? What is it called?
It was
the anti-dream or
Broken Dream.
Broken Dream.
The Broken Dream. So I guess in Detroit they have like a big ass.
The Dream Cruise.
Yeah, the Dream Cruise, and then Jimmy and his friends have their own little version of that on the same weekend.
Same weekend, so it was kind of more the lowbrow owner-built cars,
right?
And then that shop kind of sponsored that car show, so
right.
A lot of the beaters and sleds and primer kind of cars and stuff like that, as opposed to the Dream Cruise, which is more like $50,000.
Yeah, crazy crazy cars.
Vintage.
It's funny because you showed up later that night. Like you flew into town. I think I might have already been in bed. Because Jimmy went and picked you up at the airport, and then when I came up down into the living room, you had just
in the middle of the night kind of thing.
I think you were sleeping on the couch or something like that. Yeah. He had like 10 people hanging out at his house that weekend.
Those were good days, man.
Yeah, those were definitely good days.
But that was the first time we hung out.
That was the very first time we hung out. Yeah, we ended up. I remember Jimmy talking you up. And that you were coming in from California, and I was blown away.
Talking me up? What do you mean?
Well, I'm talking you up in the sense that he was like, he was just like, yeah, man, you gotta meet my friend Obie from California. I'm like, dude, this guy comes from California. Like, it just weirded me out because I was kind of new. Well, yeah, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? I was like, who the fuck is this guy? But it was one of those things, like I didn't know exactly, I didn't know who you were, and it was, the car culture thing to me was kind of new in the sense that, like, I didn't know people were going to be coming from all over the place for their, especially because theirs was a private event, kind of.
Yeah.
But that was one of my first interactions with you, first time I met you, and.
And that was a hit and run, because I came in real early in the morning or real late at night, whatever, and we went straight to the car show, and we were there all day. I was half asleep.
Yeah.
And
well, didn't they say the year before you fell asleep in the back of somebody's car because it was a similar situation where you got there super late, totally jet lagged, you went to the car show and you crashed out in the back of somebody's car for like half the fucking day? They said.
No, that's not me.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
That might have been that show.
Maybe.
If it was any.
It's possible because I know I was bouncing around. I think I tattooed the majority of that day too. I worked at Electric Superstition because that's when Jimmy and
I remember just hanging out in the parking lot almost the whole time with the cars and pinstripe, and we were doing the one-shot stuff.
Yeah,
that's all I remember about that. I think I still have actual.
That was fucking back. How long ago was that? Was forever ago.
I don't know.
Well, okay, so
18 years.
So maybe? let's fast forward a little bit. We come out to California and we did a bunch of guest spots. Like you had a super cool situation where. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. You started with Corey Miller in Upland.
Early 90s.
So why don't you touch on a little bit of like, you didn't have a traditional apprenticeship, or did you?
Well, it was supposed to be, yeah. It started out, Corey approached me in the early 90s, and we had mutual friends. Both of us are musicians as well, so we knew each other through the music scene in Southern California. Different types of music, but we kind of knew each other that way. And of course, I had heard his name through the tattoo community, but I wasn't tattooing professionally, obviously. But he approached me, and he was looking for an apprentice, possibly for his shop. Optic Overdrive was the name of the shop.
I forgot about Optic Overdrive. Yeah.
And so we worked it out, and I went and I actually did like a formal a few months with him in, you know, the whole standard, making needles, cleaning tubes, you know, mopping floors, but at the same time showing me I had done a little bit of tattooing on my own, just out of the house.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night. You actually said you kind of worked on your house
stuff,
for a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, most tattoo artists, you know, you look at their legs, are all a mess from practicing. I had family to do that, so I didn't have to. I don't have anything on my legs, honestly. So I went, you know, I had my cousin and a few other friends that would let me practice on them. And then I went into Corey's spot, almost like a tryout, like for a job. I tattooed a friend of mine who I was in a band with, and so Corey watched me, you know, what I could do, and then so from then we actually did it was a formal apprenticeship. He taught me like how to do things professionally.
Right.
And then with his lineage through Jack, you know, I felt like I'm kind of part of that lineage. I mean, Jack and I didn't really know each other. Jack Rudy,
right?
Obviously, we weren't tight, but through Corey I knew him, you know. So it was kind of being on the West Coast, that was kind of a big deal, because Corey already had been tattooing about 8 or 9 years at the time, maybe around that. And then he came through Jack's.
Yeah, I want to say Corey said he had started mid to late 80s, I think he said. And you said you started early
90s, so that'd be about right. I think he had been tattooing about 8 years or so at that point.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we did a formal apprenticeship, but it got cut short because he was in a situation with the shop. I don't know all the details, but he had a couple of partners that didn't work out, so he was kind of running the place on his own for a long time, which wasn't the original idea. And then some events happened at that shop that I'll have to have you tell him tell the story.
So he didn't allude on camera. He did allude. Well, he actually talked about it like in the when we were in the back room of the shop, and he had a rough and humble, I guess. You know what I mean? Like he had some pretty good stories, like some pretty shitty good stories.
Well, and also this was a different time with tattooing. You know, there was still, you know, a lot of rough type people getting tattoos, and it was a walk-in shop, and they did a lot of custom work there. But they were open, like, I think the first shift I worked was 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. was the shift I worked.
It's funny,
and it was right next to a strip joint that also served booze.
So it's funny he mentioned the strip. Mentioned the strip joint.
You know, you can imagine what's stumbling in at midnight. You know.
But that's back then though, there was a lot of money to be made in those situations, because tattooing, a lot of times tattooers back then in the 80s and the early 90s, the guy who apprenticed me, he had a day job. So back then, they made most of their money after 6 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
They worked their day job.
Everybody's still 9 to 5ers, most of the world.
Yeah.
So they're not coming until they get done with work, so that's when the shop's open, right?
Exactly. So if they were lucky, they could have somebody maybe work the earlier shifts, but I don't even think a lot of shops had early shifts in certain areas. I think on Long Island we were able to do the early shift and the later shift, so it kind of worked out. So it did make sense from that. I couldn't imagine working like a midnight. I remember going to fucking Shamrock many years ago, and and even Tattoo Mania, and walking into those shops at fucking 1-2 o'clock in the fucking morning, being like, fuck this, dude. It's I don't want to say it's dregs, but you're getting people just hanging out on the streets, fucking drinking all afternoon, and I mean, I've done my share of that kind of crazy shit, but it's like, I don't think I could do that on a daily. But again, I think if you don't know any better, then it's almost a little bit easier to to kind of take,
Yeah, that's all you know.
So how different was it for you though? Because you had a day job, like you had a real job. You were like,
that's a whole other story itself. I was a banker, had a 9 to 5, had a guaranteed wage, had a lot of responsibility, had health insurance, had a 401k working. I was very young, but I started early with that. Went to school for business and that kind of thing. And then I would just do tattooing and drawing as a hobby. And then Corey approached me, and then I never thought about being an artist professionally. That was like a dream. Who makes money doing that?
Well, especially as a tattooer, if it's such a, like, you at least had your feet wet with tattooing family and stuff. Like when I got asked to do it, I was like, yeah, I'm good. And in a million years, I never thought I would be able to do this for a living. You know what I mean? Back then, back in the 90s.
I remember making my first $100 tattooing. I was grinning ear to ear. I couldn't believe it. Because a bank job at that time, you're making like $14 an hour, which is really good at that time.
For that time, yeah.
And it'd take you all week to be taking home $100, you know,
right.
or half a week at least. And I'm like, I just did that doing artwork. That was amazing to me. And that was at Optic Overdrive.
I was going to say, not only doing artwork, but just doing it in such a fucking strange environment for something you're not used to doing.
Yeah.
You know?
And I grew up, you know, I got uncles who, you know, were in the biker scene and some family and stuff that were, so I was around tattoos growing up. My first, going back further, my first experience at a tattoo shop was at the Pike. And my uncle took me and my cousin when we were little, 5 years old maybe, or 6 or something like that, and left us in the car. I wonder if he remembers this. Or maybe my memory is wrong, but this is what I remember.
Wait, he left you in the car when he was getting tattooed?
When he was all, stay in the car, I'll be right back. You know, this was the 70s, man. So me and my cousin, they're fucking around with the knobs on the car radio, and he's like, don't mess with me, I'll be right back. And we didn't know what he was doing, but he was at the Pike. He walks in, I think it was Bert Grimm's, honestly. He was on the corner.
Okay, yeah.
And we're in the parking lot in the middle of the day. And we're just sitting there like, okay, 5 minutes rolls by, 10 minutes rolls by. Like, so we're getting bored, you know. We got the attention span of a 5-year-old.
Yeah, these are much simpler times.
Oh, my God. Yeah, you could let your kid walk to school on his own, you know, or whatever. But so he was taking a while. So we get out of the car because we're bored. And we want to see where he went. So we go around the corner. And some of this might be imagination, but this is how I remember.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
because you fill in blanks when you're that young.
Yeah, at that point, you do tend to remember. I mean, shit, I do this now.
Yeah, I might have been 6. I don't know. But anyway, we go in the corner, and this is my first experience with a tattoo shop. I don't know who was working. I think the Shaw brothers were still there at that time, late 70s. I don't know who it was, but this man looked big and scary and tattoo biker type guy. And he sees us peeking in the glass, you know, trying to see what's going on. And I think I remember seeing my uncle in the chair, just getting a name or something, you know, something quick. And the guy comes up, get the hell out of here, kids, you know, like opens the door and scares the shit out. We went running.
Did your uncle at least?
No, he didn't acknowledge.
Oh,
they were his kids. I don't know who these kids were, but we were booking it. We went back to the car all scared and sweating, like. But that was a different time, you know. Kids didn't go into tattoo shops, you know.
No, you know, God, could you imagine?
Don't even think about bringing your baby into a tattoo. First of all, people today, why are you doing this? Even if it's socially acceptable now, why? How about a little adult time? This is an adult place. Well, why are you bringing children? I'm just not into that. That's not the way I was raised. That's not how. I mean, I don't understand that concept. Now, if you're having an event, that's a different thing. But actually, why the day of your tattoo? Why are you trying to ask if it's all right if I bring my 3-year-old kid in?
I think that's testament. That's testament to how different the business has become. But having said that, there are still shops like you said. Yours, my shop now. It's like, yeah, we don't do that, man. Like if you got an appointment to get tattooed, then your job is to show up and get fucking tattooed with no constraints of children. You know, I'd rather, you know, a lot of times people don't bring a significant other because it tends to make things difficult. You know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, there are people that totally dig on being there. But you know as well as I do, dude, waiting on somebody to get tattooed, like waiting to get finished, fucking sucks, man. There's nothing fun about hanging in a shop while somebody's getting tattooed, while somebody else is getting tattooed.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my first experience with the tattoo shop. So, that history. And then fast forward, you know, 15 years or 16 years, whatever it was, you know, again, I said, Corey approached me. We worked it out. I did a couple of months there, 2-3 months at Optic Overdrive, and then some things happened at the shop. He was kind of wanting out, I think, because the partnership wasn't working out. And I don't know the full story on that. It's not my business to talk about it, but he closed the shop down. Now, mind you, in the meantime, he convinces me to quit the bank day job. So now I've got all the security, right? I mean, God bless him because it made me do what I wanted to do.
Right. Sometimes you need that, push out the nest.
Well, yeah, for me too. Like, you know, I was level-headed. I was a good student at school, and so, you know, your whole time in school, they're like, good luck trying to be an artist if that's what you're really passionate about. Good luck trying to be, you'll make money when you're dead, that kind of thing. So you just kind of I kicked it to the curb, thinking I'll never make any money at this. So I studied business, and you know, what I learned during studying that has helped me run a business.
Yeah.
But so it wasn't, you know, time wasted, but I never thought I'd make any money as an artist because I was told you can't, for the most part.
Well,
all around society, school, good luck.
I think growing up,
which was bad advice, by the way.
Well, most certainly. Well, yeah. I mean,
a lot of ways to make money as an artist. That it doesn't have to be fine art.
Right.
You could be an illustrator working for the city.
I mean, I would imagine. Like, I don't even imagine. I know for a fucking fact it was a lot easier back then to make money as an like an individual artist, whether it be graphic design, whether it be, I mean, shit, I got my start in high school, painting T-shirts and jackets, and then that moved on to, I had a business in a flea market in a mall where we set up an airbrush booth.
Yeah, airbrush and sign painters were still making a living at that time. Actual painting by hand.
Yeah. And again, that's something we could do. I think tattooing for me almost was the next logical step in being an individual artist, like I don't want to say freelance artist, because you kind of are to a degree, but it was very similar. I think the only difference between what I did as an airbrush artist and what I did as a tattooer was the fact that as an airbrush artist, I can create stock. I can make T-shirts. I can make jackets. I can do paintings. I can put stuff in the booth, in a storefront that I can sell, and not have to wait on a client. Where with tattooing, you're incumbent upon having a client in the chair to make any kind of real money. Unless nowadays you have a clothing store, or you sell some kind of merchandise. Which again, I went through that phase as well as a tattooer. Where I created artwork that people were purchasing, but not everybody had that. And back then, not everybody created Flash, which is where I made most of my money back then.
That's how it was back then.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, the shop closed down right after I quit my day job. So I had a little bit of money saved from the 401k, which was almost nothing, but because, I had to pull it out.
Plus, you weren't there that long. How long
I was there like 6 or 7 years, because I started when I was a teenager.
Okay, yeah.
But still, you pull that money out early, they're taking, 60% tax, early withdrawal on an IRA account or whatever, So it was like, honestly, it was like $8,000 or something, and I was able to live on that for like 6 months.
Oh shit!
For the most part, and Corey closed the shop down, and I had nowhere to work, so I ended up going and like opening my own shop. Honestly.
Well, is that when you kind of did the whole like when I met you when we came out to California? Did you go back to work with Corey before you opened your own thing, or this is because you worked for Corey for how long?
10 years. Well, but it was 10 years total, or actually a little bit more. But in between, there was about a half a year, a little more than, or almost a year, where I had nowhere to work. Check this out, because I had no portfolio, because I had only been working at a shop for a month and a half, and I was half apprenticing and starting to work a little bit. Because when he had told me, he's like, "Dude, you're an artist. You should be doing art." And I'm like, okay, and so he convinced me. He's very convincing, which was good because he made me believe in
motherfucker.
Yeah, he made me believe in myself and that I could make money doing this stuff. And I saw something in me artistically and got me to quit. I don't know if that was for his own reasons or if it was to actually get me out,
well,
in the right track, but. So I had to go. I had no portfolio. This was photographs back then. And this is back in the days where you had to develop your film. You take 20 photos and one good photo out of all those.
Literally,
so you do 15 tattoos and you might get one photo that you're willing to put in your portfolio. So I had a portfolio that existed of like 6 photos. Try and go get a job at a walk-in street shop in those days with 6 photos.
Yeah, that was it. That was kind of at the cusp where you kind of had to be a little bit legitimate. Like you had to show. Because it was so easy to go into a shop and just be like, yeah, I've been tattooing for 10 years. Having only been tattooing for like maybe a year, you know what I mean? And then there were guys getting jobs with other people's portfolios, you know what I mean? There was a lot of underhanded bullshit.
I remember Henry Powell that also worked with us at 6 Feet Under. He and I kind of came up together, for the most part. He had been tattooing about a year or so when I started, maybe longer, but professionally about a year, because I think he started when he was like 15 or whatever, Henry. But I remember when he was out of work too, because he was working at Optic Overdrive. So he went out to like Hollywood and got a job, I think, at Purple Panther.
Oh shit! Okay.
And then I think he might have worked at Tattoo Mania for a little while. But he had a year or so worth of portfolio.
He had a solid work.
And I remember him. He's like, "Hey, we'll go out there together." He's like, "I'll give you a couple of mine if you need them." I'm like, "How am I gonna get a job?" I can't. So we went out there and I didn't have shit, man, because I just didn't have the work. Why would they hire me?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so I found a spot where I was able to open a shop quickly and on like county property, didn't have to jump through hoops with conditional use permits and all that. And it was just a space, and I had the business behind me, so I knew I could do that part of it. And I just was taking walk-ins and building a clientele for a year and kind of figuring things out since Corey wasn't really apprenticing me anymore. But I think he did feel bad because after about a year, he had I think that's where the 6 Feet Under name come from. He was working out of his basement.
So that I hadn't realized that's exactly where the name came from. I found that out.
Yeah, he was literally working 6 feet underground
in
his basement, and saved some money. And he called me and said, "Hey, man." I think he probably felt bad about the whole thing a little bit too.
Well, not for nothing. He kind of had you
time into me,
Yeah, he kind of had you on the lam. And this is what I wanted to ask: how much do you think the fact that he talked you out of having a real job was more about trying to get you like Misery Loves Company kind of situation, where it's like he wants to surround himself with all the people and put them in the same situation, not for like ill will, but just to be around like-minded individuals who basically, it's like burning your bridges. Like, oh yeah, come with me. We're gonna make this work together.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
I've often wondered that. You know what I mean? Like, because it is kind of a thing where it's like, well, I don't want to go down the
subconsciously.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe subconsciously.
But anyway, at the time, so I had already started building a clientele, and now I've got my own shop when I have no business having my own shop.
Right.
And I was surviving, and I was starting to build. So when I ended up going back to work with him, because I'm like, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. This makes sense. I got to kind of finish what I started. And so then he opened up 6 Feet Under at a different location, not where it is now, for a year. And it was split with like a hair salon.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, yeah.
But it was kind of like, it was an old house. So on this side, where they were doing hair, and the shop had been there for a long time as a hair salon. And then Corey worked something out where he rented the other half of the building, for tattooing.
Right.
That was kind of a fun thing, a fun spot.
Well, it's always kind of cool, especially, it's funny because back then you didn't know any better. Like nowadays, shops are either very traditional in a sense that they run in a certain manner, and they're expected to look a certain way. And then when you mix it up with that kind of weirdness, like the salon thing, it's like that's when it takes on a different life of its own.
It sounds really cheesy though, but it wasn't, because the stylists back then, they would be almost gone by the time we'd roll in. So there wasn't like at the same time going on. It was almost like a separate situation. Well, it was just an opportunity to present itself, and he knew the guy who owned the spot, kind of an old hippie dude, real cool guy. And he was into art and all that, but he was a hairdresser since like the early 70s or late 60s or something. But anyway, so he saw the spot, and he was like, I'll work here for a little while, get him to see where it goes. So anyway, then we went to downtown Upland, and I was there during the whole time trying to get approved for licensing in the old town, and there was a special committee for just the downtown location, even back then. So I was kind of there with them during like the public hearings at City Hall.
Yeah, I could imagine. Like it's such a, and I'm assuming it's a historic district.
Yeah, it is.
And it's sweet. It's because it for me personally, like, not that I'm uber familiar with California, Southern California, but it's like, to me, that it's a lot more in the way of box stores and strip malls and stuff. And when I went there the first time you took me there, I was just like, damn, this is fucking not. I love this little town. Like, It reminds me of an old school. It's obviously not a single road like we have in the Northeast, but it's like, it is kind of like that. It's like this center drag through town, and he's right fucking there. It's a beautiful location.
Well, and this was at a time where tattooing was not really mainstream,
and it was straight up frowned upon.
Yeah, and so we had an inn, or Corey actually met you know who it was? It was Bill Kinnison, Sam Kinnison's brother.
Oh, for real?
He moved to Upland and got on the city planning somehow from Hollywood.
Fucking crazy.
And so we met him, and Corey met him, and so we kind of had, this is life, man. It's who you fucking know, right?
Certainly.
And so the fact that he was intrigued by what Corey had to say or whatever, and we had a guy on our side on the planning committee. Yeah. And so, anyway, long story short, he got the approval, and so downtown Upland is where 6 Feet Under has been ever since.
Yeah.
And I worked there for 8 years or so at that exact location, and that's where I really made my bones. I mean, that's where I was, started really building my clientele, honing in the skills, and that kind of thing. And it took about 5 years where I felt like I was like always booked out.
And you felt comfortable, doing tattoos.
Yeah, I at least 5 years before I was doing, certain things where I was nervous about doing or whatever. And I also, that short apprenticeship that I did have with Corey, he kind of had taught me the old school ways of certain things. I mean, it was like you didn't tattoo forearms that first few years. That was frowned upon. Like, wait till you get better, because that's considered prime real estate. Everybody's going to see that area. You want to make your work good there so that you can get more work.
So it's almost like
your reputation is on the line.
It's almost like dragging out an apprenticeship where, when you start as an apprentice, you're doing, usually legs, ankles, calves, exactly. Whatever, just to try to get because the skin is easier to tattoo because it's already pretty much stretched. You know what I mean?
It's all tight,
and people can hide. We call it junk draws. Like I think you were there when we did the one of the events, the Star Wars. We did on May the 4th, and that's where that's my junk draw. I'm just going to fill up this leg with a bunch of garbage.
Yeah, junk draw. I never heard that. I like that.
Yeah. Oh, you never heard that?
No, I never heard that.
It kind of got its fucking. It got its name there because it at that event, for us at least. I'm not sure if other people use it.
Oh, is that right? I don't remember.
Yeah, so because everybody was just getting actually I think it was Tiff. Oh, yeah. I think it was Tiff that actually, because she was getting a blast over. Like she had a leg full of stuff.
I tattooed Tiff that day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You did
first time
I think it was crossed. You did crossed lightsabers. For that,
I don't remember what it was.
I think it was
but it was tiny and right by her kneecap area.
But so I think she might have been the one. I don't know. Fuck, I wish I could remember where it came from. But somebody came up with the thing. It's like, oh, it's my junk drawer, and since then, now I've got shit. Every time we do an event, we call it shenanigans. At the end of the night, you get together and everybody, I mean, I don't want to call they're not drunk they're drunk tattoos.
No, they are.
But tipsy tattooing. But we call it shenanigans, and everybody's got a draw. All my good friends have junk draws now.
Well, I remember that happening at the conventions after the show, going up to the room.
Most certainly, yeah.
And let's do this one with our left hand, and your right hand. Like left-handed tattooing at the convention for all the artists. Exactly. Stuff like that, silly.
Well, I love the fact that at the end of the night you could have those gatherings of individuals where it was like. We did the Austin convention. It might have actually been the very first Austin convention that Marcy put on in Texas. And I remember, no, I think it might have been the second one.
Was that the Dead Bird one?
Yeah.
That was the second year.
That was
because I was there for that. Everybody got
the second year. I think there was I forgot the name of the bird. The big black birds, and it turns out like a shit ton of them were found dead
fell out of the sky.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
Thousands.
Yeah. And somebody was like, oh, we should all get a fucking souvenir tattoo. And we all went back to Rodney. And at that time, he was with Lisa Barnett. And we all tattooed one another.
I was supposed to be doing that with you guys, but it got so damn late.
Yeah, and
I never got one.
Yeah, dude, it's funny because that night...
It was there like 2 a.m.
Oh.
And we're still out in the halls waiting.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy. Yeah. Like, I left there. We had a flight the next morning.
Was that Rodney's room?
Yeah, it was Rodney's room. Okay. We left there. I left the room at 2 a.m. Went back up and then realized I left my sweatshirt downstairs. Went back down to their room to get my sweatshirt because we were leaving the next morning. We had to be out of the hotel at like 5:30 a.m. And I remember walking in there and there was a bunch of weird shit. But there was a fucking line full of people waiting to get fucking tattooed.
Yeah, I was hanging out with Jimmy and we were supposed to go be a part of that, and it just got so damn late.
It was crazy, dude. And I remember that same night at the end of it all, Rodney, Richard Stell showed up because he was just walking the fucking halls. He was like fucking whatever, So he's walking the fucking halls and he hears a buzz of a machine at fucking 5 in the morning, walks in there, sees Rodney finishing up a tattoo, and Rodney's like, Richard, do you want to tattoo me? And Richard's like, yeah, man, what do you want? I think he got like a bat on the side of his knee or something like that. So when we're leaving for the hotel, I think I was with Julio, and we're getting ready to leave. I don't remember if it was Julio or somebody else. But as I'm coming down the elevator, Richard is getting on, and I'm like, oh, you getting up already? He goes, getting up. He's like, I'm just going back to my room. And I'm like, he's been up. And I didn't realize until the next day when I talked to Rodney that he had just finished tattooing fucking Rodney. And I'm like, you got tattooed? I saw Richard in the fucking in the elevator at fucking 6 a.m. He's like, yeah, he just left our room. He just finished tattooing me. I'm like, God bless you, motherfuckers, dude. Crazy.
Yeah. It was the little tiny bird upside down with the X in the eye.
Yeah, that's what I have on my leg. I think I got tattooed by Scott Calcaterra from Virginia, and I think he was the only sober person in the fucking room, and I think I got the most banged up. No offense, Scott, but it is the most banged up fucking bird that was done that night, man. Although it is funny, Julio tattooed Lisa's wrist, and he fucking drew the thing on. He was supposed to tattoo her. I don't think he actually did. He drew the fucking thing on, and because we didn't stencil anything. Everything was drawn on. And he fucking draws on. He's fucking hammered. And he doesn't drink much, so it's understandable. And he's like, how's that? And she just looks at it and she goes, Julio? For real? And he's just like, what? And it looked like a fucking mess. So I think I ended up tattooing her. I don't remember how that ended up, but it was fucking... Again, it was an amazing night, so...
That was a good convention.
Anybody who's never done shenanigans, really needs to partake in it.
The Austin show was like that, too. And that's when I started really painting with Jimmy with the one-shot and stuff. And after the convention, we would tattoo in 12 hours and then go paint in the hallway till the wee hours.
That was to be honest, that was funny because there's such a car culture down there, and she's so ingrained in that car culture. She set up a whole, and it was the first 2 or 3 days, first 2 or 3 years she did it, where she brought in all these guys, and they had barbecue. They set up all this one-shot stuff with boards already prepped and ready to fucking paint, and people just hung out till fucking 2 in the morning.
I remember painting with Jimmy. I'm Dan Barnett. Man, I haven't talked to him in a long time. But yeah, those guys are the ones who kind of gave me my start with the one-shot painting stuff, Oh, check this out. This is what I painted there that day.
Oh, for real?
This exact bottle, I think. I didn't sign it or date it, of course.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, it's funny, too, because the one-shot stuff is...
This is what I painted that day. I drank whatever this was, Rolling Rock or no?
Heineken?
I
don't even know, man. It's probably Rolling
Rock. Pulled the label out, but that's from that day, man. That's crazy.
Oh, that's fucking cool as shit.
Yeah, that's one of the first one-shot pieces I ever did.
Dude, so I remember that Austin convention, and this is when conventions were still pretty fucking fresh. I think it was early 2000s, I think. Yeah, I want to say it was early 2000s because I think I was already in New Hampshire at that point. And I remember she put on that first convention, dude. She brought Marcus Pacheco, Aaron Kane, Guy Aitchison were there. Dude, she emptied, at that time, these were the rock stars of fucking, I shouldn't say rock stars, but fucking true artists in our fucking business. And she got all those motherfuckers to come through.
Yeah.
And good on her, man, because that was a time that, and the show is still going on, but obviously, for me personally, it doesn't have the same gravitas it had back in the day,
Yeah.
And we were on something. We were on shenanigans and junk draws and dumb shit like that. But so when did you actually move out and do your own thing? Because that's kind of after I met you is when you were kind of on your
I'd just gone out on my own a couple of years before that or whatever. Yeah, and I just I left 6 Feet Under after being with them for a little over a decade, and it was mainly just because I wanted to go out and do shows,
spread your wings,
and learn from other artists, and Corey had told me so many stories about his travels, and of course you're going to be intrigued by that, So I think it got to that point where I wanted to be doing that, and I was kind of a workhorse at the shop too. So it was getting a little bit to where.
So let me ask you a question.
I wanted to be gone to try and learn more from other artists, and he encouraged that. But then when it would kind of be detrimental to the shop because I was there helping the shop.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So how? Because again, back in that day, the guy I worked with, Siv at the time, or worked for at the time, he kind of dissuaded me from doing a lot of shows because, I mean, for me, it wasn't about making a name for myself. For me, it was just a matter of growing and stretching my wings and getting out there and just life experiences. Like I said, coming from Long Island, never leaving Long Island, to me, it's detrimental. You know what I mean? And he was cool with it at the beginning until he realized, every time I was away, it was kind of costing the shop. Yeah. And at that time, I would go to a convention, pay for the booth, pay for my hotel room, hang a fucking Lotus Tattoo banner, and still kick back 50% to the shop on the road. I mean, this is early 90s, or mid 90s, and he was pissed, and I'm like, dude, I'm still contributing, but it wasn't enough. And did that happen to you as well? Was Corey like, yo man, someone's got to run the fucking shop. I need somebody here.
I wasn't doing a lot of shows, and the first shows I was doing was the shop shows. The first
that you guys went to as a group.
Yeah, and so I'm a team player, man. I grew up like that, all for one kind of thing. But I don't know. I think I did a Dallas show on my own, and it got to be where and I can't put words in his mouth, but it got to be where I was going to stay the extra day because there was an after thing. That I was, you're working the whole convention. You don't really get to talk that much sometimes. If you're busy, a good show, you're not able to mingle.
You want to try to get
go in early.
Yeah, get in a day or two early.
Right, and that's what I wanted to go in there a day early, and then I was going to come back the Monday after the show, and then get back to work Tuesday or whatever the deal was. But I remember like him saying to me like, "Well, when you leaving? When you coming back?" You know, like there was some pressure. You know, he was always very much like, "Yeah, you should go. It'll be a good experience for you, and plus it represents the shop." Absolutely, I'm all for it. Again, I'm a team player. But it got to that point where I think, again, I was at 6 feet under. I was busy, you know, and Henry and I were like the main guys. Henry's still there, and we helped pay the bills in that place. Obviously, that's what you do, right? But I think it got to that point where I felt a little uncomfortable. Like, on one hand, you're being told, go spread your wings and represent the shop, but at the same time, you're feeling pressure to get back right away. Don't go too early. And it makes sense because the money's not going to come in. I don't know if that was the reason or not, but that's how I felt a little bit of that pressure. You know?
I think, you know, it's funny, like, it's been coming up more and more about, like, shop ownership, you know what I mean? And the fact that, you know, things need to be taken care of because me as a shop owner, I mean, I know, you know, it's a slippery slope in the sense that, like, you look at the fact that, yeah, I own the shop, and it should be my responsibility to make sure the shop is up and running. And that's how I always felt at it as well. It wasn't until I actually owned the shop where I was kind of like, okay, everything needs to happen. I can't make all the money and worry about supplies and everything. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't have the kind of shop where everybody just comes and goes as they please, and then like they supply all their own shit and what. I mean, we take care of everything. So you have to make sure you have to run a shop. It's not just a matter of just making money.
Well, you know, this was a different time too. So you got to think about, like, I feel like I came on. We started tattooing around the same time, within a few years, right? So I feel like there was a shift happening of the old school, and then a new way of art forming, and a new way of doing guest spots, and a new way, you know, because I remember guest spots was like you were still dropping to the shop 50% or whatever if you came and did work at somebody else's shop.
Back then, I would.
Some places are still that way.
I would.
Right?
I would gather that we were breaking new ground. Making new ground more normal. You know what I mean? Because there were always people traveling. I mean, people always did it. But I think so many people were doing it.
Yeah.
That we were adding normalcy to the way things were getting done. And I think that might be the issue that I have with today is the fact that the new kids are doing the same exact thing we did. They're basically breaking new ground. They're creating new ways in which things get done. I think my problem with it comes from the fact that it's unsustainable to run shops the way that we did or the way that we do. So we have to figure out a way to make that work, or find people that are like-minded to us that are okay with the way we do things. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. You know, so I think that's kind of a big step, and it's something to try to figure out because it does require good business sense. You know, it requires good sense to figure out how to make it work where everybody can be happy and I can still maintain the shop for everyone. You know, I mean, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people
everything in life is a balance, including a tattoo shop. You want to try to have that good balance where you're allowing someone, if it's an employee, because I've been a shop owner too, so I understand the other side of things too now. But you want to keep your guys happy that work under you, or for you, or however you want to say it, with you.
You know, it is one of those things where, to me, a shop is made up of a community. It's not just one person. You know what I mean? There may be one person that stands out. You know what I mean?
Or one person who's got the responsibility to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. But I still look at it as everybody makes up that shop. Without one of those people, the shop changes. You know what I mean? If you lose somebody, the shop changes. You know what I mean? If you gain somebody, the shop changes, for better or worse. I mean, that's a fact. You know, you just try to find a middle ground that everybody can work at. You know, and again, man, I know a lot of shops out there where one person can tilt the fucking boat and flip the whole bitch, and it's like, it fucks everything up. I mean, I know a lot of guys who have left shops because, the guy hired his girlfriend or started whatever, and it turns into a fucking shit show. So I understand how difficult, and a lot of tattooers are fucking very temperamental. You know what I mean? They want a place that can be comfortable.
Yeah, but back to the guest spots, how they were done, because I remember talking to Corey about Suzanne. You had mentioned her.
Yeah. He brought her up a ton.
And he would go there. And he's like, I still make a drop when I go work over there.
Yeah.
You know, and this was, 12, 15 years in his career.
I would imagine a lot of that's got to do with out of respect.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think she was lining up all the work. She was supplying all the supplies. And so, But then when I kind of went out on my own after that, so that to end that chapter, it was all on good terms. He kind of felt that I was wanting to maybe leave because I wanted to spread my wings, and I was kind of feeling like I think I'm about ready to go, because I wanted to go experience things that I had been hearing about, But mostly I wanted to better my art, And to back that point is when I went and left, I got a tiny spot smaller than this. My cousin's had a motorcycle shop. I rented his office
just
space.
To say this is small.
Yeah. Oh man, this might be the smallest tattoo shop in the world.
Yeah,
if you could call it a tattoo
I would
shop.
go as far as to say that could. I'm
going to get a sign.
I'm going to go on a limb and say there's probably shops that I've seen in like Amsterdam or somewhere in the Netherlands where
or in the 1930s.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, yeah. All you need is a fucking sandwich board outside.
Yeah, I'm with it, man. But I should make a sign that says "World's Smallest," or California's smallest.
Yeah, California.
Yeah, I could probably go with that. But anyway, so I got a tiny spot because I wanted to be on the road. That was my main thing. I wasn't, I didn't have a chick at the time. I didn't have any kids, and this was about me seeing some things. You know? And so that's what I did. So it wasn't about I want to go open a shop down the street with all my clients to come to, because that wasn't the case at all. I moved, 4 cities down, and I had a bungalow just like this, smaller. And it was appointment only, no sign on the door. I just did my clientele, and then I would start doing the conventions, and that's when I met you and Jimmy during that time.
Because I had worked in that shop at your cousin's bike shop.
Did?
Yeah, I worked at it. That was the one that was in the front office, right?
Yeah,
with the bikes. Yeah, because I tattooed a guy's. I was working on dude. I did some big work in there. I worked on 2 back pieces in that shop.
Are you? I don't even remember.
Yeah, and matter of fact,
I was there 7 years in that little tiny spot.
That's my point.
Because I wanted to travel.
My
that was
first,
my focus.
my third trip out to California that I actually worked in California was at your shop, and I had a guy. I think it was just before the Long Beach convention. I think it was just before the early days of the Long Beach convention, and I came out. I think I came out before the convention and worked at your place, and that was one of the first times I'd ever seen it, because you have one of the first private studios that I had ever gone to.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the fuck? I remember pulling into this like industrial
pretty
park,
much,
and I'm like, where the fuck is this place? And you had blacked out fucking windows with the logo in black, so it was black on black, and.
Yeah, and the
oh wait, no,
curtains.
excuse me. I'm trying to think. That was before the black on black. You just had a blacked out window, and then it was the office. You walked into the office.
Yeah.
The second space that you had opened.
That was the second.
That was the black on black on black.
Yeah. The first one I had just a little sticker said
a little sticker and speakeasy on it.
Yeah, and that ended up becoming Speakeasy Tattoo before speakeasies were a thing.
Well,
honestly. Before the hype went crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny, man. Like the worst part about the whole speakeasy thing is the fact that if you got to put a fucking sign on the window, that bitch ain't a speakeasy. There was a place, there's a fucking giant sign, it's a speakeasy, and I'm filming it on Instagram, like, worst speakeasy ever. We walk in, it was fucking dumb.
Yeah, because my history culturally, I lived in the past, even as a kid. I was always drawn to the eras way before my time. For whatever reason. And I'll tell you what my influence is. I'll tell you right now. When I was growing up, that whole speakeasy thing was from a movie called The Cotton Club.
Oh, yeah.
With Richard Gere and Diane Lane and all these stars before they were huge stars. I was in junior high when that came out. I watched that film. Before that, way before, I was 5 years old, back when I first had my tattoo experience at the Pike. And it was a movie called Bugsy Malone.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Baio. And it was all kids dressed as gangsters driving pedal cars that looked like old Model Ts. That's where the seed got planted in my brain about all this weird shit I do.
Right.
It doesn't make any fucking sense business-wise.
But, it's funny when you say the business-wise thing. So having seen your places, and I think we should touch on how you set those places up, but I think it changed how I did my whole thing. Like,
we talked about that.
Yeah, the first private studio I worked in was when I moved to New Hampshire, and I worked with Corey Kruger. And we did want a storefront, because I wanted to be in a storefront. He kind of wanted more of a off the beaten path thing, and we kind of settled on a second story kind of private studio that was a walk up that I hated, absolutely fucking hated it. And but it had a similar feel. And this is just before I met you. And then it wasn't until I dug what you did in California. But it was when you went out to fucking Dallas, to Fort Worth.
Yeah.
That I was genuinely.
I miss that fucking location to this day.
Yeah.
It just never went anywhere because the way I do things didn't make any sense. Because I have, every time I change shop locations, it's another art project to me.
Yeah.
And I get all into it. I mean, even this little tiny space. I mean, I'm doing textured walls. I got to have that vibe. Otherwise, I can't feel at home.
Yeah, you're all about the ambiance, like, and that's the one thing. Like, like the first small place, this now being the last small place, the latest small place, and then when you did Fort Worth, it was like big, and it had the feeling of Deadwood. Like, if anybody has seen the show on HBO called Deadwood, imagine if somebody came into like a frontiers kind of town and is opening up a gambling hall or a pub or whatever, but you're the first fucking one. You're the first one, and you've got class, you've got fucking talent to do stuff, but you have a certain limitation on supplies and budget. Yeah, budget. Good way to put it, budget. But in that place, you had like flock wallpaper, curtains, and fucking they're not even curtains. They were velvet.
No, they were velvet.
I was gonna say velvet curtains. I was gonna drapes. I was gonna say drapes.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember walking in there and just being like, "What the absolute fuck?" I was blown away. I was just like, you had a bar, you had like
a little stage, poker table in the middle of the room, with the green felt.
And we worked there a couple of times, and yeah, man, I was like, fuck yeah, this was cool. This is mad cool.
Yeah. The problem is it was being financed by my California clientele, so I was back and forth every 2 weeks, and going back to the budget thing, I'm a DIY motherfucker to the bone because I can't afford the other thing, and because I was raised, fix your own tires, your flat tires, you're fixing yourself, you're doing your own plumbing, you're building your own fences. I was raised that way, so if it's my shop, I'm not going to hire somebody to do that. I'm going to do it myself anyways, So that's and I'm all about learning, So that was a big learning experience. That was the first time I ever hung drywall in that place.
Dude, I was blown away. I mean, like, the amount of work that went into that place was just like, and again,
it took me a year.
Did it take that long?
Well, because I was every 2 weeks there, So
that's true. I remember talking to you and being
and it was me and two of my buddies. Really, it was me, and then when they could help me out, they would help me out, and I used a lot of their tools and stuff. They had some good stuff. You met my buddies and stuff. So I mean, and they dug it because it was a project, something fun for them.
Not only that, it seemed like they had a kick out of getting tattooed, having you in their backyard, on top of the fact that they could have a place to hang out. Because that's kind of what that was the theme. That was the feel I got from it. It wasn't just a shop that you come and go to. It could totally be a hangout.
A social club, that vibe. Yeah,
exactly.
I always tell people, and that had the same thing as all my other shops. No sign on the door. You walk into a tiny room that I built, brick wall, whatever, and then you ring the bell, and then the wall pops open, kind of thing.
Right.
It's so common now. People take it for granted because after that moment in time, this whole speakeasy thing in Vegas and all that popped up, and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into some shit that I didn't have, and I was kind of jealous of it because they went and did it like how I wanted to do it because they had the budget. But they were always missing a little. So that's the whole point they missed.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Charging $25 for a cocktail. That's not a speakeasy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is a lot of times when people do something like that, they take the essence and they try to make it happen, and then they remove the fucking soul because their heart's not into it. They're not that person. I think that's the thing. That's the difference between, say, somebody like you and somebody like me, for that matter. You know what I mean? Like, you've got the heart and soul for that. Because, so fast forward to me opening up my place. The first place was different because it was a second floor, studio space, hardwood floors, tin ceilings, a beautiful space. You know what I mean? But I couldn't do that. And we also had a mad budget back then.
Yeah.
We were on a mad budget because I had just left Darkside. This is back in the end of 2002. We just left Darkside. And we're opening up Hope, me and two other guys. And we also had different headspaces. Like, we weren't, Julio and Eric were like, we just need a place to work. We want rooms. And me, I'm like, okay, well, we just need to get open because I need to get in there. So we did this second story thing, which was kind of a throwback to Color Box with Corey because it was like a similar idea, like the big open front room for people to sit in and then private booths, which I don't like, but it made sense. Private rooms, actually. When we did Hope, it was one of those situations where I been to Texas. I've been to your Texas shop. I've been to your California shops. I'm like, this motherfucker is legit. Like, he knows what he's got. He knows what he wants. And I want to capture a little bit of that. You know what I mean? So when we did Hope, I told the guys, like,
well, I'm glad I could influence you, because I didn't make any damn money, and I don't think any of that.
No,
because I'm an idiot.
That's the problem.
I follow my passion more than my brain.
I was just going to say, that's the problem with passion projects, is the fact that it comes to a point where, you know, you take a chance on something because you want to live that, but the problem being is they're not economical. They don't make sense.
And this has been my downfall, or your own worst enemy situation, as we all are. What makes something cool is it's unique, and not everybody's doing it, right? And so I seem to have a little bit of a knack for that. Maybe that's what my clients come to me for, and an interesting, unique experience, or there's some intrigue there. But if something's really fucking cool, there's not enough people that know about it to support it financially.
Right.
So same thing with music or art. If you're doing something really unique, unfortunately, most people have to be told what's cool. And once they're told what's cool, then everybody flocks to it.
And it's no longer it's no longer cool.
And then it's no longer cool. I have a problem with, once something gets popular, I'm a fucking nothing to do with it. Even if it's the cool thing I helped create, I'm done. As soon as this is a problem I have. As soon as even if it becomes successful financially, I'm looking for something else to do, because I'm like, I already did that. You do the same thing.
No,
you know?
to a degree, but the difference between me and you is the fact that I have
common sense.
I wish it was that. I have 8 other people that I have to rely on. So it's not like I can just simply say, okay, this is dead to me. I just can't. So to me, like what I was going to say before, like when we built Hope, it was like I wanted to do what you did. Like, I remember the little front room. So I had a barber friend, and I'm like, oh, we're going to build a little barber station, and you're going to sit here, and you're going to let people through. But then I realized, I'm like, okay, I'm opening this place with fucking, at that time, I had 5 of us. I can't have, 5 people's customers coming and going every single day, walking into a false front little barber shop, because it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. And the more and more I thought about it, and this is where, find your place kind of thing, or, the more and more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, you ain't that guy. You're not Obie. Right. Like, you're a fucking dork. Like, I have aspirations. I'm not going to say I don't have aspirations, but when it comes right down to it, I'm not that cool. I'm not the cool guy. No, and I'm not saying any of the cool. Hey, you're fucking a little bit of a cool guy. But the fact is, I know my place. You know what I mean? And my place is make a nice.
You can't help but you've got to take the influence from somebody or something that you admire, and then you've got to make it you.
Like a lot of things in my career, my art and everything, I look at a lot of things out there. I look at everything, and I absorb a little bit of it, just enough to keep it in the back of my head, and not ape it, not emulate it, but just know it's there, and let little bits of it leak in. And I think that's what Hope became. Hope became something that was like, well, it's never going to be Speakeasy. It's never going to be Obie's place. It's now my place, because I took little bits and pieces of what I liked, what you did.
Well, that's what an artist does, right?
Right.
You're a sponge. You absorb all these influences, and then those particular influences mixed together, becomes you. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's nice to say that, like, I mean, I'm a product of a lot of things. Like when I worked at
say that again.
Yeah. Well, getting into tattooing in the first place at Cliff's was different for me, because it broke me out of being a wannabe artiste. You know what I mean? And I became a little bit of a tattooer. I don't think I was a tattooer, because I had highfalutin ideas of what it was to be a tattoo artist. You know what I mean? It was Paul Booth that kind of took my knees out, and I watched him tattoo, and I go, yeah, you can call yourself a good artist. You're a mediocre artist. Yeah. That motherfucker can tattoo and is a great artist. You know what I mean? So it grounded me a little bit. When we moved to Lotus, working with Tom and Tom Butler and Civ, it was one of these things where it's like, okay, now, all this flashes in this shop because we're collecting what we want to see, not what Cliff had collected, which Cliff had a hell of a collection. But now we're collecting what we want, so there's a lot more new school stuff on the walls, a lot of Vinnie Myers, Dave Waugh, fucking, at that time, the 222 guys were doing stuff, Eddie and fucking Scott and Jeff Rasher. So that's opening up all this West Coast influence to me. And then hanging out with Civ. At that time, I didn't know, it wasn't until we opened Lotus that I knew Civ was in a fucking band. Like, I'm not into hardcore, you know what I mean? Like, so now I'm like, well, you're in a band? And Civ's like, yeah, I'm in a band. I'm like, what's the band? He's like, oh, the Gorilla Biscuits. I'm like, never heard of them. So it was weird because it's like everybody knew well, not everybody, but anybody in that scene knew that, like, Civ, he was an influential part of the hardcore scene in the New York area, or worldwide, I guess, So that opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? So I think, again, coming out here, and what I loved about what you did was everything had your thumbprint on it. And that's why I use Deadwood as an example, because you're not, nothing is finished. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a bad way.
It's got rough edges.
Exactly. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, all the furniture is fucking proper vintage. You didn't create bullshit. You know what I mean? And that's the difference, I think, when you're talking about speakeasies, like these bars in Vegas or the wannabe speakeasies of any city, whatever. While they do have the aesthetic of being a proper speakeasy, they just don't get it. Because everything is super commercial. Everything is super, has to be usable. Everything's brand fucking new. Nothing's lived in. Nothing has that, that worn edge, that smoke damage.
And it's, exactly. And they're serving their drinks in fancy glasses. If you go to some of Hollywood, kind of glamorized those speakeasy thing, and I love that too. The really plush gangsters that had the really plush speakeasies.
Yeah.
But most were not that. Most were literally like it's a basic place to come drink without anybody knowing you're drinking booze. And they're serving drinks in coffee mugs so that if when he walks in, it looks like you're having coffee.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember.
Or they say, would you like a coffee? Yes. Would you like a little sweetener in that? And they'd pour whiskey. And so there was code words and all that shit. That's cool as shit, man. What's going on now, just like anything, man, everything gets watered down and
I think the world we live in, you have to play that game because
you're trying to make money.
Well, that's the problem. Stakes are so high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've got friends that are in the industry, like they own bars, restaurants, whatever. And the fact is, in order to make money, in order to keep that place open, like there are certain things you have to do. Now, if you're going to do something, and I don't want to say this is your formula, but it has become, you create these things for a short period of time.
And then leave it and make nothing and lose all your money. That's what I'm about.
That's the crazy thing. I've often said with friends of mine, it's like, man, some things aren't meant to last. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
And it's horrible.
That's a good point.
Because, even with me, with my shop, I often sit back and I'm like, how long can this go on? And we just hit 21 years, 22. We're coming up on 22. You know what I mean? And all I keep thinking is, how much longer can you make this last? Because I've often said, big shops, like, these big group shops, they're not collectives in the sense that everybody, people are, they're oh God, I hate using the word employee, but it's the God's honest truth, because that's the only way that can work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're still running a business.
Yeah, someone has to be on the line.
Yeah. But yeah, the Texas thing, that back to that shop, I had my heart and soul in that thing, and I did everything with my own hands, with a little help a lot of help from some of my good buddies out there. But when I had to leave that, I thought I was gonna start crying, dude, when I left that shop. The last time I shut that light off, I'm like, fuck.
When you told me you were shutting down and moving back to California, because you had bought a house, I think you kind of almost restarted.
Well, I was actually trying to make that move back then, full time, but because I wasn't there enough, and because I didn't have a street shop environment. If I had just a sign on that door, I could have got somebody working for me.
Yeah.
But then here's my dumb ass too, is like, I get because I built it with my own hands, I didn't hire somebody to do it, because it's all my idea, I'm very attached to it. Like an old classic car or whatever, and I don't want anybody else driving that thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anybody there when I wasn't there, because I didn't trust anybody, first of all.
I do remember that, and I'd be like, why don't you have people working there? He's like, dude, I can't have people there when I'm not there. And I'm like, man, that's the point of owning a shop. Like, you got to give the keys to somebody, Oh, that's, if you think about it, that's uber old school, where it's just like, yeah, you don't work here unless I'm here. Yeah. I open the doors, you don't get keys.
Yeah.
But that was a throwback to a time where you couldn't trust motherfuckers. Like, if you gave them the keys, and then you take a day off, and then you come in the next day and everything's gone, that's a throwback to a different time.
Or what happened in the shop while you were gone before the cameras were on.
Yeah.
What were they doing in there, and who were they doing it with? And next thing you know, the shop owner was getting sued because somebody's got some chick after hours in there that's
or
drugs or whatever.
It's a sketchy time, and the worst part is those times aren't behind us. I mean, we still hear stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a crazy thing, but I think there has to be a point where you give a little bit. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
And I would have if I had come across somebody that I felt want to work, but I just couldn't find anybody. You know, because the location that I chose, I had some friends that were not in the business. They're guys I grew up with, you know. They didn't know anybody that were artists there. And the guys that I did know were actually in Dallas proper, you know. They were set in their own spots. Why are they coming out to me?
Yeah, I was going to say, being in Fort Worth, especially back then, Fort Worth was kind of like breaking new ground.
Well, yeah, and this was North Fort Worth, so it wasn't downtown. You know, it's like almost country, between country and suburbs in the city. I was off the beaten path.
It's the bitch. It's really the bitch of having to find the location that A is brand new and B is affordable. Because not for nothing, I mean, that would have been great in a downtown. Even my new shop would have been amazing not new, but the shop I'm in now would have been amazing in downtown. But the problem being is you can't afford that much space,
especially if you're bouncing back and forth without a crew. You know, with helping you. But I'm in the same boat. Since then, I find myself in the same position no matter where I go. Because, first of all, the way I came up was kind of ingrained in me the old school mentality, but coming in a time where things were changing rapidly. So I have the new school, gallery influence and that kind of thing with the tattoo shops. And then also doing guest spots where you're just happy to have a guest come to your shop, so you treat them as a guest. You're not taking a percentage. You're setting them up work. You're putting them up in your house. You're getting all the soda they like and all the booze they like. Yeah. That's a proper host. And you and I think a lot alike in that regards because we're old-fashioned in that way.
Most certainly.
Because it means something. And when you treat somebody like that, they're going to remember that.
And I've been very fortunate my entire career in the sense that every time I've been someplace, I am treated incredibly well. So, in turn... And I'd like to think I'd probably say 80 to 90% of the people that have been to my shop that I personally know, I'd like to think that they've been treated that way. If you haven't, leave a comment, whatever. But yeah.
Are we recording something?
But I would like to think that people I've tried to reciprocate. Things have changed though. Yeah. I will admit now we do have to charge a percentage because. I mean, there's still, no offense to anybody who's paid a percentage who's been to my shop. There are still people that do not. Like, I mean, when Rodney comes into town, when fucking,
Well, the situation is going to determine
because there are certain people that are family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then there are other people that want a place to work and they know that I've got a nice shop, whatever, or they want to work with.
And being the guest on the flip side of that, if I go to your shop right now, I have no clients out there. I haven't been out in your shop in 10 years.
Right.
If I go out there, if I had a bunch of clients from conventions lined up, that's one thing. But if I'm out there taking walk-ins, that's a whole different scenario.
Yeah,
I mean, I would insist that you take money.
You're
bringing the work to me, not the other way around.
Yeah, there's definitely an etiquette now that we have to try to. You kind of have to work around because not everybody's going to be the same, and not every situation is going to be the same. So it is a difficult. It's a slippery slope. It's definitely a bit of a high wire. You know what I mean? Where you try to figure it out and make it work. And dude, for me, it was difficult to make that change where I had to start charging, a percentage. And you know what really helped that? And
things are changing again. Like the times I was talking about, things were changing for a different way, and now they're changing again. Every decade or so, every industry is going to go through something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I had certain artists that came in from overseas, like Willie Martin from Spain. I had Vittorio Mustachio, who came in from Italy. And I remember, they were just like, oh, Joe, percentage, how much of a percentage? And I'm like, no, you're good. And they're just like, no. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's cool. Don't worry about it. That's how we do it. And they're like, no. And those motherfuckers, they gave the percentage.
Yeah.
And they set that bar. And I'm like... It was very touching, in all honesty, because it was just like, no, dude, you're a guest, and I want to treat you the way I've been treated. And they're like, no, you're to them it was, and again, it sounds queer, but they were just like, no, we're just privileged to be here. We're not privileged, it's shitty. They're just honored to be there. I don't know, you know what I mean? They were just digging the fact that they were in the shop and they were getting the work, next to me, whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think is fucking lame, but God bless them, But they were the ones that kind of set that bar at that point because it was just kind of like, well, these guys are willing to pay, and they, it got to a point where it's like it's expensive to fucking keep.
Well, especially if you're doing it all the time, you know.
Yeah.
If you're doing it on the regular, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. You know, it is, like I said, it's you know, I think what we're seeing happen is the business is changing to a point where there's just so much going on. And there's not the wiggle room that we had back in the day where we could have somebody come in, spend 5 fucking days with both tattooing side by side, going out to dinner every fucking night, you know, working all fucking day, hanging out, going to shows, whatever. I don't think that, you know, we can't afford it. It's not like we used to, you know what I mean? So now it's got to be a little bit more reined in where it's like, no, we're going to hang out. We're not going out tonight. We're not going out. We're going to go back to my house to dinner.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I do that a lot. But most people are cool with that. They're just kind of like, yeah, dude, like that's killer. I'm down with that. You know, get to Joe Camabianco's cooking for me.
Yeah, home cooked meal on the road is always good. You know, especially when you're cooking. I mean, you got, you know, some
try
skills
to hook it up. Try to hook
you
it
got
up,
some skills. You know?
And again, it makes people feel like a bit more like family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But again, it's hard to do that with everybody. Obviously, you know. Like I said, if you've been to my shop, sorry if you haven't gotten that treatment.
Well, we were talking earlier too. The days of, because I was joking with you earlier. Like I think it's funny that you think you're gonna leave back home on Wednesday because you know you're going to instead drive back to Phoenix now. You know? But those days are kind of mostly gone unless you have a good couple of months or something.
Well, and therein lies the problem. If this were 10, 15 years ago, and I'm hanging out Thursday night, and you're just like, "Oh, dude, like, come on, going back to fucking Arizona, fucking change your flight." I mean, you've done it. You know, I've done it in the past. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean.
You and Jimmy have talked me into some really dumb shit.
Dude,
it cost me a lot of money.
But
just to hang out with you for 24 more hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'll do it.
Dude, all I remember is that trip from Salt Lake City because I flew to Vegas to hook up with Jimmy when Jimmy was still in Vegas. We were going out to Salt Lake, and you were going to meet us in Salt Lake.
Oh my God, one of the worst flights I've ever had.
And for us, I flew into Vegas, spent the night there, and Jimmy and I drove from Vegas to Salt Lake. Hands down, one of the most beautiful fucking drives I've ever been on. Through the mountains. Everything's covered nice. Middle of February. It's fucking amazing. And we got there, and we were just talking this fucking flight up, and this drive up. And you were just like, really? Was that amazing? I'm like, dude, you got to come back with us. And you canceled your flight back to California. You drove back to Vegas with us, and then you flew home from Vegas.
Yeah.
We almost had Lau Hardy, who flew in from England. He came in with a group of people. He had George Bones with him. His wife, Lau was with Naresh, and I think maybe his wife, and we're telling Lau about this, and he's just like, really, it's beautiful, and I'm like, dude, it's amazing. And again, this is a guy from London, and last minute, he wants to go, and then the next day, he's like, I can't, and we're like, why? And he's just like, because if I cancel, he had booked an entire leg of a trip, so it was like, he flew from England to New York to Salt Lake,
all the same ticket, so it breaks the chain.
Exactly. Salt Lake to Vegas to California, and then California home. And he's like, dude, if I miss Salt Lake to Vegas, my whole trip is canceled.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck. And it's a shame because it really was. It was an incredible to do a trip like that with family and friends. It just makes it that much more memorable, you know.
Now on that same trip, did I fly back to California? Did you and I rent a car and drive to California because you had to be out here for something else?
No, that was
a different time.
That was a different time. That was I went to Long Beach. I did the Queen Mary convention, and then I did a guest spot at Carrie's place down on the Pike, and then I did 3 days there. And then you came out. You picked me up in a. You rented a black Cadillac. Picked me up at Carrie's. We drove out to Vegas. Yeah, because my wife was out. No, she wasn't out there. We went out to what the hell's the Rockabilly show? What the hell's the big weekend there? The big Rockabilly weekend there.
In Long Beach?
No, in Vegas.
Oh, the Rockabilly weekend.
Yeah, we went there. Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, we went from Long Beach to Vegas. We spent 3 days out there.
Oh, that's right.
And then did we drive? I don't remember if I flew home from Vegas and then you drove home. I think I flew back from Vegas.
So yeah.
Because it was all like kind of last minute shit. It was fucking amazing. Again, these are just.
But you could change plans at any moment. Whatever your plan was, just forget exactly. That. We're going to get Fogo de Chao after this, and you're going to have to stay. I'm sorry.
It's not happening.
Yeah, those days are few and far between.
And that's the shame, in my opinion. That's the shame of the current state of the business for me. And I'm sure a lot of people, it's not busy. We're not as busy as we once were. And unfortunately, the idea of being able to fucking, just kiss it up to God and fucking do whatever the fuck I want. That ain't happening no more, man. I need a bit more structure in my life.
Yeah. I hear you.
So let me ask you a question from a political standpoint. I thought you were a ride or die California dude. You know what I mean? But I've come to realize in the past.
First of all, why would you even think that? Because
you were raised here and you loved California. You know what I mean? You never had anything bad to say about it. You were one of these guys that I looked at you as a true California tattooer. You know what I mean? Or a California resident. But what I've come to realize in the last few years is how many people have left California, have gone to Texas, have gone to again, you tried to get out, but again, I never looked at it that way because maybe it never stuck. Maybe because you never got it to stick. Yeah, right. Because you never got it to stick. You moved to Fort Worth and you came back, and then I just assumed this is where you'd be. Your girl's from here, her family's from here, your mom's still here.
Yeah. Having the family here obviously keeps you rooted. At least one foot in at some point.
But now you're in Arizona.
Yeah, that wasn't so much a political thing. It's so expensive in California to buy a house. It's ridiculous. I was living in a house prior to moving to Arizona, and this is like right after COVID and everything. There was, business wasn't booming for anybody. Everybody was frozen up, and I'm living in a house that's 800 square feet in the suburbs. It was an old vintage home, like in this town.
That's kind of. I remember
selling for like $650. 800 square feet house.
Yeah.
This is not by the beach. This is not by the big city. This is just
in the suburbs.
Upland. Again, there's an old town area, and that's where I was, but it's still suburbs. We're not in LA. We're not at the beach. Yeah. And to me, it wasn't real. Like that money is not real because people are not making that much more money nowadays. So how can you say that? And that's nothing. They're houses that were down the street going for $1 million that are 1,500 square feet. They don't look like $1 million homes. They're built in the 70s. Yeah. It's not even cool vintage.
I think that's the problem where we say it's not worth it because that's how I always put it. Like even by us in Connecticut, man, prices are going through the. It's everywhere in the world. I'm not going to say it's just one place, but I look at it as that's not worth it. But that's what they're going for, and I'm like, just because you guys are trying to make this the fucking norm, does not make it right. And that's how I look at it. And I think that's a lot of what we're dealing with in today's world. Not even this country, in this world. Where the craziness is becoming the norm.
Yeah, I hope that's on this down spiral.
I would love to see
I hope there's a change of the tide here, man, because nothing makes sense right now on all levels. But the reason I went up in Arizona was because I wanted to get into a house, and I couldn't afford nothing here. And that's only, what I was originally looking at was moving further east. Like Riverside, where I was for a bit there, is a little bit more affordable than this area. The further east from LA or the beach you get, the cheaper it gets. And I'm like, well, I can kind of afford this, but why do I want to live in this city? There's nothing here. So I go a little further east, and I looked at prices there. Well, I could do this, but again, it's freaking Banning. Who wants to live in Banning? I'm sorry if anybody lives in Banning, but there's really nothing other than, if you have work there or whatever. Right. Why would I want to go there? So I'm like, well, if I'm going to go that far, let's look into Palm Springs. Because Palm Springs has something to offer culturally, right? But then I'm like, oh no, I can't even come close to afford Palm Springs.
You can't afford that, yeah.
Jesus, that was like, the day that just being retired people there is gone.
The crazy thing
if they are retired, they've got the,
I think the thing that I always thought was crazy with you is the fact that you're working in a private studio, you're on your fucking own, and it's like, how much can you afford to just fucking walk away from shit and just be like, yeah, man, this is cool. I'm gonna make this happen because that's where I want to live here, or I can afford to live here, or whatever. That's a big step to take.
Well, but this time, as opposed to when I was in Texas, I was flying back and forth, right? So that's a bigger expense, and you're booking flights. You have no freedom. You got to go when the flights are there, or it's going to cost you more money. When I decided to do this, I told myself, okay, this is a day drive, a half a day drive. I'm in Arizona in under 5 hours, so I could go and come and go as I please if I'm making the drive. And I like driving. I don't mind. That's a good drive because there's not a lot of traffic going that way, and it's just a straight shot.
It's almost like driving to Vegas, I would imagine, or
similar. Yeah. But 10 years ago, you asked me, you tell me I'd be living in Arizona. I'm like, hell no, I'm not living in the desert.
Dude,
are you kidding me?
I was just saying,
cactus and I like green lawns, and you mentioned I'm a West Coaster, but I was raised by East Coast Italians.
Yeah.
So I have a huge East Coast influence in my upbringing. So,
which is, again, you kicked around a long time ago. I remember you and Amy talking about whether or not you could live in the Northeast.
We still talk about that, entertaining that idea, And honestly, probably if we didn't have family here rooted in it with the support system we have in California, we probably would be even more open to it.
Yeah. Well, especially when you have kids and stuff like that, it becomes, you don't want to take your grandkids away from your parents.
Yeah, there's that, and then you have nothing to offer anymore. So there's that.
Well, I mean,
I love hanging out, but that ain't enough.
You're not too far from wrong. You know what I mean? Like, even with what we got, like, I love my shop. I like the guys I love the guys I work with, but it comes to a point where, there's only, shops only.
I don't have a lot of confidence in anything at this point.
Yeah, well, honestly, I think the rug has been thrown out from pulled out from a lot of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just the way it is. So
yeah, to get back to, again, I've had a few other shops since then. I had the shop in downtown Riverside, which was totally under the radar. That's when I started. Well, I had the shop in Ontario before that for 7 years, and I had a crew with me, but it was still the same vibe. No sign on the door, appointments only. Only. But we were able to do events and carve meets and movie night and poker night and all that. It was a good time. I miss that. I miss having a shop for that reason. Doing the events, I really miss that.
Yeah,
it's been 6 years since I've had that setup. I've been completely on my own for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So I had the spot in Riverside. It was just me, and that was a great spot. That downtown, I love it over there. But that, everything's getting, unless you have a crew of 4 or 5 guys, how are you going to pay the bills? You can't do it on your own.
I hear that.
And then you also run into the problem. I think this is where I am today, because I'm kind of craving a shop, but I don't want just a strip mall shop. I want what I want. I want the old school vibe. I want an old building, and unfortunately, I've been on the look for the last decade, honestly, because I had that Austin, adventure for a year or two, hoping I could find it there, and that didn't work out. But in California, I've been looking for a decade to try and find a downtown location that has that old vibe that you and I both love. I don't care what town it is, honestly, but either there's already a shop there, and you're not open. Well, there's a bunch of regulation. You can't open a shop within 2,000 feet of another shop. You can't be in some cities. Like, you can't open a shop within a 1,500 feet of a school, 15 or 500 feet of somewhere that sells alcohol.
Yeah,
including restaurants. So they got you by the balls in California with the zoning. Like, okay, you can have a shop, but it's got to be in this zoning. You go to that zone, there's already a shop there.
Yeah.
Or if there's not a shop there, okay, you got to be in this zone, but you can't be by a place that sells alcohol. Okay, well, it's the same zone. If you're going to say I can only tattoo by the gun shops and by the bars and the strip joints, but you're also saying I can't be opening within 500 feet of a place that sells liquor. It's the same exact location. You're tying our hands. So they're getting around the fact, constitutionally or whatever, that we have to allow tattooing because it's unconstitutional not to let somebody have this.
But they're
tying your hands.
Exactly.
Completely.
Yeah.
And if they're not, there's already a shop there.
Yeah.
And now you can't be within 2,000 feet of another shop because they don't want a tattoo zone.
Massachusetts was like that when it got legalized in Mass. They basically made it so hard to open up a shop.
It's impossible.
That you'd have to go to court to try to get things overturned, and it was like one of those things. I'm like, well, unless I'm from there, there's really no reason for me to do this. So why am I knocking myself out?
Yeah.
If I don't really necessarily need to be here or want to be here, only because I think it's a cool town, that may not be enough for me to fucking jump through those fucking fiery hoops, Yeah.
So. Or if you do happen to find that needle in a haystack, it's nothing close to what I want. It's a strip mall,
right?
Whatever you call them, box stores, whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't appeal to me at all. There's a lot of shops like that, and they're doing very well. Some of them.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But
it's not me.
It doesn't match your aesthetic. It definitely doesn't match. Like, you can't do this. Like if you basically did this in that environment, you know what I mean? It would be that fake bullshit. No matter how good it looks inside, if you got to pull into a strip mall to go there, it kind of is a bit lame. It's got to be that back alley. I mean, I've only been to a handful of proper, speakeasies where it was down a back alley, around a corner, next to I was impressed. I was genuinely impressed by this place, and it was classy inside. It reminded me of what was that Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy movie? the Nights, Harlem Nights.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Where it reminded me of the candy store, where it was like, what was it called? What was his the character's name? The name of the place was something sweet.
Sugar.
Something sugar. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the bar.
The speakeasy.
Yeah, the speakeasy.
I can't remember.
I always fucking do that. I wish I gotta stop doing that. I shouldn't bring something up unless I fucking know what the name is. But it reminded me of that. Like, you go downstairs in this fucking, I mean, literally when you walked up to the back of that building, there was this like this. It was like this giant air conditioning unit, like behind a chain link fence, and there's this metal door with a red light hanging and a fucking. And you could see they had a little thing. And I remember, I was like, that's got to be it. I think we were with Scotty Munster, Kitty, and Nicole, Tiff, my manager. I had gone out there with her when she got tattooed by Scotty. And that was one of the things we wanted to check out. So we go in, and they had never
Sugar
been
Rays.
There. Sugar Rays, yeah. But we go there, and I'm like, that's got to be it. So you fucking knock on the door, fucking thing slides open.
Love it.
And the guy goes, he goes, how many in your party? 4. Are you meeting anybody here? No. Shuts the door. So we're like sitting there, okay, what the fuck, 5 minutes later, door opens up. Guy just goes, go downstairs, fucking knock on the door.
Yeah.
Fucking plain fucking sheetrock walls. You go downstairs, knock on the door. Fucking door opens, dude, and it literally, she's wearing a fucking evening gown, fucking inside was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I think it was called Voltaire or something like. I can't remember the name of the place, but it was fucking gorgeous. But that was a proper. I really, really, really dug. But again, it's also those, $20 cocktails and little tiny plates of fucking crazy food. Like,
but if they're doing it right, it's still
it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. Cool. It was gorgeous. And again, that's something I would have loved to have done in my own place. I'm not the guy for it. You definitely are that guy. But the problem being is trying to find a place to do it.
Yeah. And then if all those things line up, if all the planets align, then can you afford it? Well,
that's
you literally have to open a speakeasy selling booze out the back to pay for the damn place, because we're not doing a tattooing.
Yeah,
it's even if you're slammed, it's
tough, man.
$15,000 in overhead a month
to really do something special and keep the heart and soul of it. Is difficult. It's really it becomes a labor of love, which tattooing I kind of think is anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to do that much more with it, it's difficult, man. I'm not gonna say it can't be done, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
You know that shop in Texas? The mechanic across the street started leasing out, and all that shit. He knocked all the walls down. It's a freaking mechanic shop now.
Oh yeah, go figure.
Man.
Oh, dude, the funny thing was my place that I'm in now. If I had left, that's all he thinks he was going to be able to re-rent it to another tattoo studio. I'm like, dude, nobody's as stupid as I am. Like, trust me on that. Nobody's going to pay the fucking rent, the overhead, and everything else in this fucking place. Like, it takes a certain type of fucking knucklehead to fucking want something that ridiculous. You know what I mean? But that's what makes, the place that I work at that much more special. And that's why people, when they come in, they're just like, wow, this is cool. You know what I mean? And not every place has that. And it's not all about the ambiance sometimes. Sometimes it is just about the artists, which is great. I like to think we have both.
Yeah. I trip out on that because you used to complain, like, because all my spots are always lamp lighting. I never have overhead lighting.
Yeah.
Like, how do you fucking see in here, But I trip out on the opposite because now I've been doing this so long, and I'm just, you can't call me a nomad because I'm not really traveling, like, nomadically, but every 3 years, I'm fucking in another spot by myself somewhere. Yeah. Just by happenstance. It's not my plan. It's survival.
Well, it's funny too. But even with the music, like you're a musician. You know what I mean? Like you went from being in a band, to moving on, and then now you do a lot of solo gigs. You do a lot of backups for other bands. You know what I mean? Like you've got a lot going on in Arizona where you're doing a lot of small private gigs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm actually, when I go out there, I focus on that now, But also because I don't have a choice.
Right, it is backup. But it's good that you have that backup.
And I love playing music. I've been playing music as long as I've been tattooing,
right,
and getting paid for it. Not just as a hobby. But of course, the bread and butter is tattooing.
Right.
So, it's going all right out there. But I've been doing this 3 years now. And I'm ready for something else.
You're starting to get
waiting
more of it,
for an opportunity. you can't really wait, but I'm keeping my eyes open for opportunities.
Right. Well, I think that's something.
And I am jonesing to be around other artists and working.
It's just got to be the right.
It's been almost 7 years since I've worked with anybody. I come in and I my clients like it. They like the intimacy. We can talk freely. I don't have to. I hear the music that we like to. My client and I want to hear. It's usually what I want to hear, but they never complain. So,
but I think that's the idea of inviting. But I think that's inviting them into your place, and that there's got to be a reason why they want to be here. It's not just about getting tattooed. It's the entire experience.
Yeah, and that goes. When you start talking about this is a whole other subject we didn't even get into. We haven't really got into much, but back to like the old school versus new school. I shouldn't even use those words. The old-fashioned way and the new way. A lot of times people forget that tattooing is an experience. It's very personal, and some of the artists that have been tattooing 15 years or less. You mentioned about how guys will just for a long time throw the headphones on. And they're not even talking to their clients. Whatever works for you and your clientele. If they're into that, that's fine. But they're gonna remember that experience, right? And you and I both know artists, tattooists, that their work's kind of outdated, or they just never really reached a high skill level, or they're just old school tattoo guys.
Right.
But they're slammed because people love to get tattooed in their shop or by them, or want to hear their stories, or they just love being around them. Yeah. And it's not all just about the art; it's about the experience of getting tattooed. This is living art.
Well, I can honestly say that for the longest time, that's what kept people coming back to me, because they wanted to be in the chair, they wanted to be able to sit down and enjoy themselves and have a conversation and really kind of shoot the shit and get a good tattoo to boot. So it was like there was the overall experience. I think that's becoming less and less in certain cases, because I don't think people know the difference. I think people are used to, and again, that's part of the thing when younger kids come in and they change the way things are done. That becomes the new norm. And again, I don't agree with it, but it's not for me to say whether what I do is right and what they're doing is wrong. It's just where people find themselves and where they feel comfortable.
Yeah, and as every industry, we kind of act like this is we're the first people to have to deal with this. Yeah. Almost, and almost all industries have gone through this sometime in the history, and especially in the U.S. From the back to the beginning of the country, the frontier days and all that stuff. And you mentioned Deadwood and Swearingen and all that. I mean, they've got the competitive thing going on with the bar that moves next door without telling them. And this shit's been going on in all the other industries forever. Yeah. I think it's just recently as in the last 20 years, the tattoo industry really flew under the radar for all this time. Yep. And now it's no longer under the radar. So you're going to have this transition where you get exploitation, you get people who, because it gets more competitive, they have to do what they have to do to survive. Sometimes that means what used to be called selling out, or just to stay ahead of the next guy. If I don't do this, then someone else is going to do it, or just to maintain some sort of popularity, I'm going to do this or that. But once that can of worms opens, there's no closing it anymore.
Well, and therein lies the problem. Then that's something I've been discussing the last 2 days with people, man. But between TV shows and the amount of conventions that are going on, and the corporations that are buying up small family fucking companies that are pretending to be family-run companies now, and they're just part of a larger corporation. It's all about becoming part of the bigger picture, so that somebody else is making more of the money. And again, it comes right down to it that corporate America is slowly, not even slowly, it's steamrolled us.
Oh yeah. Back to musicians. Musicians have been taking advantage since the beginning like this. The talent is always the one getting screwed, right? Yeah. But of course, most talent doesn't have the head for business either, so there's that, But I lost my train of thought, man. I looked at that whiskey gone. I'm like, you need a refill, and then my head's gone. I don't know where I was going.
I think what you're saying makes perfect sense, in the sense that it's like talent can get you very far. You know what I mean? But when you want to make it to the next level, then it's going to require something more. It's going to require branding. It's going to require not so much confidence in yourself, but also the smarts in order to make that branding actually take off and make fucking money. You know, we talked about, I think, I would go, I shouldn't say I would go as far, but I would say Ed Hardy was one of the ones that really, you know, if you look back on like J.D. Crowe with Tattoo Tour, a Tattoo Brand, and then you look back on like Tattoo Johnny, and you look at Cherry Creek, that was the beginning of like kind of the heavy monetization and branding of shops, like, or branding of a flash that you walk into a shop, it's all Cherry Creek flash. You walk into the shop I came up in, had all fucking, you know, Tattoo Brand from fucking J.D. Crowe. That was kind of the beginning of a lot of that. And then you move on to, let's say, Christian Autajeg with Von Dutch. And then he moves on to fucking Ed Hardy. And then you have Sailor Jerry. You have all these brands. You can say they're bastardized, but the fact is, like, certain people were making money off of them. Problem being is corporations were where the money was coming from, you know? And that's, I think, that started that whole, and it created a lot of interest in this business.
And in regards to what you're saying, how that's a tough decision. If say you're the one being approached to sell your name or to sell your art, and at that level by a company that's corporate, right? And you've got family to take care of, you've got overhead going on, or this is just an opportunity. If I do this, I'll be able to buy a house in California, or this will set me up or my kids up for a while. You know, if it's getting into those $1 million deals, like some of these, you know, Ed Hardy and those brand names and Von Dutch, and that was millions of dollars.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, keep in mind,
I don't know who made the money, but I'm just saying,
exactly. Keep in mind,
millions of dollars going on there.
Ed Hardy didn't make that money up front. It took a second round of fucking getting burned by the guy he fucking hooked up with before he made the millions.
I don't know anything about all that.
I'm just saying, mine is a cursory, very, you know, no.
But you know, this goes back to the TV shows, and I've heard you talk about it. I've had Corey. I've heard a lot of people who've done the television shows talk about, well, if I don't do it, someone else will, and I might as well benefit from something that I've put my heart and soul into. I deserve it, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's something, if that's the whole TV thing is a blessing or a curse.
It's a combination.
But if you make a couple of bucks and it allows you to buy a home for your family, then.
But here's the thing, and you know.
But then you got to hold true to tradition, and when are you stepping on toes, and where are you shitting on the people?
And therein lies, I think, at that point, like when I did it, it was because if it's not going to be me, it's going to be this other cocksucker, and I don't want that guy representing us. You know what I mean? And that's maybe me taking, you know, taking advantage, not taking advantage, but basically assuming that guy doesn't belong there. Trust me when I say that guy did not belong there. Like when I first said, like when I was told, reached out to by the guys from Tattoo Now, and they were like, hey, you know, this production company's reaching out to us, they're doing this show, your name keeps coming up, are you interested? And I said, no. And then the guy said, well, here are the other two people that they're talking to. And I'm like, oh, no. And I'm not going to go into who it is. And, but I've spoken shit about this guy for a long time. But I'm like, no. I'm like, you know what, give him my number. And that was fortunate. They took me.
Well,
you know, but having said that, Corey made a good point too. We didn't make fucking millions of dollars. If anything, it burns your ass that you kind of sold a little bit of your soul for this, for next to fucking nothing. That's where it kind of burns your ass. Yeah. You know what I mean? But by the same token, I was able to toe my line. I was able to be me. I didn't fucking take lines. I didn't fucking do stuff that I didn't feel good about.
Yeah, you did it on your own terms.
And both Corey and I said the same fucking thing. If I was getting paid big money, I would have been a different person. For no other reason than I can now say, I'm not just a tattooer. I'm a fucking actor. I'm being paid to play a part.
Yeah.
Right now, you ain't paying me any more than I need to be me.
But you know what? How long? This is 15 years ago now when all this was going on.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So the fact that it's being talked about still tells me that something bugs you about all that.
Fuck yeah.
And what to do about it now. The point is the cat's out of the bag. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
No,
so what do we do from here forward? Rather than just having a bitch fest about shit we've already heard.
Oh, I don't think there's.
What can you do forward?
Dude, I don't think it's a goddamn thing. At this point, your best bet is to fucking lube up the bottle and fuck the bottle, because that shit's gone. Like, it's out of our fucking hands. Like, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Like, in all honesty, it is completely out of our. There's such a separation of the thought pattern on how people in this business act. Like, some people absolutely hate me and Corey and anything TV and whatever. without realizing that fucking 20 years ago or 18 years ago, whatever it was, when Miami Ink came out, that gave such a leg up on this business. Now, you can look at that as being a bad thing, and I don't think you're entirely wrong to think that way. But the fact is, it did things to this business that we never... It catapulted us 20 years in the future to how big this business was. My opinion, though, on that comes from the fact that when you got individuals who own shops that are apprenticing multiple people at a time, or opening up multiple shops at a time, when there's no other reason, then they got a couple of bucks burn a hole in their pocket, and they're looking to make more fucking money.
Well, that's a different subject.
Oh no, it is and it isn't though, because it's still the fucking bastardization of this business. It's still the growth of this business, and not for nothing, it's tattooers. I'm a tattooer who did a television show. Ami James is a tattooer who started a tattoo show with Chris Gar.
Well, everything that's going on and the stuff that you're talking about, the industry did it to itself.
Yeah, that's my point.
So we have no one to blame but ourselves.
Well, certainly, dude. There's a reason why.
For whatever you're bitching about or you're not bitching about.
Exactly.
Whatever you've benefited from or you're not benefited from.
And that's the thing.
That's every industry, man.
No, so that's something that gets thrown in my face constantly. It's the fact that, well, dude, you're part of the fucking problem. But am I? Like, at this point, like, how is it? It's water under the fucking bridge.
It's been a long time now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I wish there was an answer. I don't think there is. I think it's beyond us.
Do you think that we're kind of segueing in a different subject now, but do you think that things will come full circle? Or do you think that there's no turning back? Will things go back to the way they were ever again? Not exactly the way they were, but the feeling, the vibe, the possibilities of having 10 years from now, 15 years from now, having the experiences that you had or that you and I had when we were coming up, when we met, does the future hold that for another era of artists?
In all honesty,
the same opportunities in a similar way.
In all honesty, no. I don't think so at all. And I think Eric put it perfectly the other night when I talked to him, Eric Inkland. He basically said, yeah, those experiences don't exist anymore because it's beyond anybody of today because we don't have there's no way for them to experience it the way we did. You know what I mean?
And you're also, this is getting to the old man talk, right? We're getting older, so our every generation says the same damn thing. Oh, my day was way better. You know, my day was this. We were such a time. It's you know, there's also a fine line there between was it better or are you just missing your youth?
No, I don't think it's a matter of...
Are you having a hard time adjusting into the next era of your own personal life? No, I think that
there's something to be said to, you know, having seen something like, okay, let's perfect example for me personally. When I went to...
I believe it was better.
Oh, no.
Just to state that.
No, okay, yeah.
But I'm just making a point.
Well, and that's why
this is the world entirely, not just the tattoo industry.
And
we are longing for a time that does no longer exist and will never ever exist again. And that's unless there's a fucking nuclear holocaust.
And that's the point.
We start over.
And that was the point I was going to make. I remember the first time I went to Europe. So, first trip to Europe's amazing. I remember seeing Robert Hernandez's work in magazines. And only a couple of pictures, you know what I mean? Like literally 1 or 2 pictures. It was those Kiss portraits he had done. This is back in 97, 98. And I remember going to Switzerland. I meet fucking Philip Lou that weekend. Dude, it was just an amazing fucking mind-blowing thing. And I remember going to the booth behind me and seeing those giant Kiss portraits, and it was fucking Robert Hernandez. And getting chills. I mean, I'm kind of getting chills now, the first time I've seen his work. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy is amazing. You know what I mean? I didn't have the numbing effect of a fucking cell phone in my hand and being inundated with millions of fucking photographs over and over and over and over and over again, where I have to try to I have to figure out what it is that I find exciting before the algorithm changes, and now that's gone, and now the next thing is coming up at me. So I think that, again, you know, people of today are living a different lifestyle. They have a different brain waves, whatever. So they're completely wired differently. You know what I mean? But I also think it just numbs us to everything that goes on around us because everything is right fucking there. And in all honesty, yeah, I have a problem with that. I have an issue with the fact that I think it's too fucking much. That's something I use. That's a phrase I use constantly. Everything in this world is too fucking much. Amazon. I can get whatever the fuck I want on fucking line. I can go on a fucking website. But why would I go on a website when I could just open an app on my phone and I can do this and I can do that? I think that while it does open up avenues for the individuals, no matter what they do, to get it right then and there, I think that getting to know the producer, the guy who builds those machines, like we used to do with coils, you know what I mean? Getting to know those things. Now people, dude, they don't even give a fuck about fucking Bishop or Cheyenne or fucking FK irons. They're just buying them knockoff on Amazon. Yeah. I'm going to spend why would I spend fucking, $1,000 on your machine when I can buy the exact same fucking machine, well, practically the exact same machine. I don't want to say that everything is made in China, but, but why would I bother dealing with the fucking manufacturer when I could just go on fucking Amazon? Now, to me, originally I was just like, man, that's kind of fucked up, dude. These guys actually build, you should support the supplier, the guy who created it. But the more and more I think about it, I'm like, did he create it though? I mean, is it not the same fucking product? And again, then I start seeing how machines are built, and I know how expensive they should be, and why I know these guys are charging too much money because they can. I wonder what's going to happen with companies like Bishop and fucking FK and Cheyenne when nobody is dealing with them anymore, because why would you? So I think they're going to find themselves in the artist position in a very short period of time.
That's exactly what you just described to the tattoo artist. And there's that fine line between paying homage and staying loyal and realizing that your heyday is over, and you're going to have to accept the fact that you've been overcharging now. Going back to the machines. If you've got a CNC machine cutting things out and it's being mass produced, that's totally different than a handmade welded machine.
Oh, and we've always said
it's got a soul.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
it's got soul going into it. It's got soul coming out of it. And it's got thousands of tattoos on that. I wish I had my machine there that Corey built me a machine years ago, 20-something years ago. I still use it every day. Nice. It's a Jonesy style deal, brass. But I'll never sell that machine. A rotary or whatever.
Well, I've often said they're tools. I mean, you can call a coil machine a tool of the trade. I mean, because it technically is. But when that was hand built by somebody, signed to you, or just hand signed, there's a difference between that and a fucking a wannabe dental tool. Because that's pretty much all fucking rotaries are for the most part. They are a tool that are very efficient at what they do.
But is our thinking outdated and obsolete? Because we love that shit, because we love vintage things anyways. I mean, I drive a vintage car. I've got a vintage Harley. My place looks vintage because I'm craving something that was even there before I was born. That going way back, and I find it charming when you have things that have been handed down from generation to generation, including a tattoo machine, to know. I remember going back to Corey, but he had a Sailor Jerry machine. A couple of them, I think. And I just remember looking like, whoa. Sailor Jerry.
Knowing that was in somebody else's hand.
I love the history, not only in just the tattoo industry. I feel that way about all things in life, And when you talk about teaching kids, like my kids, it's like they knew vinyl before they knew digital music, because I find value in seeing how things evolved. And for better or worse, I'm not going to say all old was always all better. I mean, it's nice to have your phone. Like, I got a zillion freaking songs I can listen to at the tip of my fingertips.
There's a time and place for stuff like that. And the idea is it's up to the individuals to keep that alive.
But knowing where it all came from is important to me.
It's important to you.
And yes,
to me. So it's important to you. Is it important to everyone?
No.
Definitely not. Is it going to die out? I don't think so at all. I think there's always...
got enough people carrying the torch.
And there's always going to be those people. It may get smaller and smaller, but it's never going to go away. Because the fact is, this is still kind of a craft, and people want to be grounded in that craft. And the only way you do that is to know your craft. You know how to build machines. You know how to repair a machine. Yes. I was talking to a guy through text on Instagram yesterday. And he was bitching and complaining about my friends at Electric Ink in Brazil and how, it's bullshit, it's all China, it's crap, and blah, 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 blah. Now, I had been to the factory. I don't think it is at all. A lot of that stuff is all made in-house. You know what I mean? Down to sharps now. You know what I mean? Now, granted, I think what happened was Electric Ink is a privately owned business, corporation, and it's fucking huge. it's not one of these corporations from the States here that's owned by, I shouldn't say it, one of these small businesses here in the States that is now owned by a major corporation. You know what I mean? You can say Eternal, Fusion, FK, all those companies are individuals, but they're all owned by a giant corporation. Now, again, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of all that because I don't know all the ins and outs of that. But I also know I don't deal with those companies. You know what I mean? I don't have to because I have other people that I would rather deal with. You know what I mean? I deal with a small company called Pulse in Connecticut. I just want to know where my stuff comes from, and I want to support that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just I don't buy stuff on Amazon. You know what I mean? Or not to say that I haven't. I mean, I have. You know, but it's not my intention to make that the only way I get my gear.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like this guy was bitching and complaining about stuff, and he started like fixing. He mentioned another guy who was fixing rotary machines, and at that point, unless you just don't want to deal with throwing stuff away, which not for nothing, we have a lot of disposables in our industry. Why? It's a fucking tool. Nobody gives a shit. Throw it away.
Yeah.
If it means that much to you, start using coils. Because coils will never go bad. You break a fucking spring, you repair that spring.
Yeah.
Or you replace that spring. You know what I mean? You know, a wire snaps in your fucking coil, you figure out how to fix it. You know what I mean? Your capacitor blows, you fucking replace it.
But does it matter anymore to most
people?
No,
of course it doesn't matter. And it definitely doesn't matter to most people. But I don't think that's ever going to die.
Or did it even matter when you and I started tattooing?
Well, I think it did in the sense because we knew nothing. We knew no better. Of course it mattered because we looked at it as, well,
this is how it's done. There's no other way to do it.
Exactly. You have to know how to build needles. You have to know how to tune a machine. You have to know how to...
Right,
I mean, don't get me wrong. That started to water down, and I think that was the beginning of the end, was when a machine fell out of tune. So what do? You put it in a fucking drawer, you pick up another one. You buy a new one. I mean, dude, I have... just shy of hundreds of machines. They all got used in rotation for a long period of time. But I also collected machines because, Eric's here. I'm going to pick up a machine from him.
Yeah.
Oh, the new Seth machine. I got to pick that up. Oh, Aaron just put these machines out. I'm going to get one of those.
Well, and also because you know there's going to be history attached to it at some point, and now there is.
I don't. You know what the funny thing is? Corey made a good point in the sense that he said that he collected a lot of stuff, and he would like to think that he did it for that reason. Mm-hmm. He knew it was going to be worth something. He knew the value in that, and he didn't. He just pretended to know years later to say, I knew this was going to be worth money. I knew this, Flash was going to be expensive, was going to be, value, have a value to people. He didn't. He just collected because he was a collector. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's how I felt
got the
about
same
it.
brain.
That's
how
I felt about it.
I mean, you go into his shop and it's like an antique store.
It really is.
Very eclectic, and he loves, cabinets and drawers, and he's got all that stuff. When I used to work for him, he used to give us the greatest Christmas presents for the shop. We would always get some kind of cool little drawer cabinet thing, for your art supplies, like drawing supplies.
Yeah.
And just something that just came to me now. But whether you understand it's going to be worth money or not, that doesn't matter. It's the fact that you respect and honor the tradition and history, even history in the making.
Right.
Because I wish I had some Sailor Jerry Flash. I had my hands on some at some point and didn't pick it up for some reason.
Well, it could be any number of reasons, and again, part of it is the fact that like at that time where I could have gotten it, I wasn't into it. I wasn't into the history of that. I was more into like like I said, new school. That's how I came into this. You know what I mean? So I didn't have the appreciation for what it was. And it wasn't until later on down the line that I do have the appreciation, but I'm also not the guy who should own that. There's other people out there that are more deserving. I know that sounds fucking ignorant, but it's the truth.
Right, but this goes into the mentality of when you first started, and as a lot of people that started tattooing at that same time, they maybe didn't have that appreciation of what had come before them and the guys who paved the way, because their mentor wasn't sharing that with them, or just didn't naturally draw towards old school things or old fashioned things. Same thing can be said for the people starting to tattoo right now.
Right. They don't have the appreciation because nobody brought them in that way.
Nobody's taught them, and they don't need to be taught.
Yeah.
They've got internet, and they've got, before that it was DVDs.
But I think the appreciation is always going to be there amongst a group of individuals. It's just the grand scheme of things? No, definitely not. And again, I think that we're seeing that happen with the younger generation where they're no longer chasing down the FK irons. They're no longer chasing down the fucking bishops. They're now going, it's just a tool. That's what I need to get. I will buy it off of Amazon, or I'll get the knockoff from somebody else, or whatever.
That's kind of a question that I have to you also is is it just a tool? Is it to the people that think that way because they don't have appreciation for the soul of a coil machine or what really came before them because they were never taught about what came before them, or they just don't like vintage things, like that's just not their speed, So the mentality of that was going on when we were starting. It was just not so obvious.
Well, I think that you can say that in a sense because it was growing dramatically at that point. Like I got into the business in 93. By 94, the guy who brought me in already had two or three shops, and he was looking to cut throats. I mean, he literally was opening up the street. He literally opened up the street from the guy who kind of helped bring him into the business, and then he kind of opened up the street from another person. You know what I mean? He was the beginning of the bullshit that we dealt with. You know what I mean? So I'd say by mid 90s, yeah, that was happening, and it was just, I think it was greed. I think it was greed, ego, bullshit, and the fact is, we're artists. Even if you're not an artist, you still got fucking ego.
Oh, egos.
You know what I mean?
Drive a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I guess getting back to I was going to make a point about that if the client doesn't care, then why should the artist care? If they're going in to get a tattoo and they like the finished result, they could give a shit about how you're doing it, as long as it comes out the way they want it to come out, right? So if you're a new artist, amazing artists out there, these days, and I think the TV thing helped elevate the art.
Most certainly.
100-fold, but without people who think like you and I that have a little lean vintage or classic or whatever you want to call it, if you don't have that mentality from the get-go because either you just weren't born into it, liking old things, or you were never taught that,
right?
Does it matter what tool they're using as long as their clients are happy?
No, and that's
with the result, and they're having a good experience.
No, and that's kind of the point.
They couldn't give a shit.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make, where they no longer care about the fucking. Now I think that companies like what I mentioned before, their brands like Gucci or fucking whatever dumbass Adidas sneakers or whatever, they're brands that are being worn and being used strictly because it gives them bragging rights. But we all know that doesn't mean a goddamn thing. If you can use that, you can use anything. You know what I mean? Certain tools do make your life easier. But the fact is, if you're a good artist, Eric the guy I work with, Eric put it perfectly. It ain't the bat, it's the batter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So realistically, it's the God's honest truth. Yeah. You know what I mean? Again, things work better. I like to know where my shit comes from. I mean, there's a bunch of people in Brazil that hate my fucking that think I'm a total sellout because I deal with electric ink. But I also have been to the factory and I looked at what they did. I never saw. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff coming from China because not everything. I mean, I know the motors are being produced in China. You know what I mean? Because that's just the way it is.
Plus, the pigment is excellent.
Yeah, their pigment I've been using since 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? No, 2008. It's the best stuff I've ever fucking used. I can show you tattoos that I did back then. I can show you tattoos I did with powders, and they don't age quite the same, But certain colors don't age the same. But the fact is, I think that there's always going to be a need for the tradition in this business. There's always going to be a love for the tradition of this business. And yes, it is getting watered down. Do I see a light at the end of the tunnel? Fuck no. Yeah. I don't see anything positive at the end of the tunnel. I really don't. And I know that sounds defeatist, but it's the God's honest truth. I think at this point, as an older generation tattooer, I just want to continue to tattoo. You know what I mean? I'll bitch and complain about, how things go in this business because that's who I am. Like, I've got a big fucking mouth, and I'm very opinionated in the way I think, and there's going to be people that agree with me. There's going to be people that fucking hate my fucking guts for what I have to think. I don't fucking care. I can't help myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to kind of wrap up
good idea.
Some things there. Something that we hadn't really touched on is, for me, going forward right now, and we've talked about ideas that we'd love to do. We have similar ideas on how we want to end our careers, whatever that means, because it ends when you die.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end.
Because there's no retirement for most tattoo artists.
We just came from Jack's thing yesterday. And it's
you never know anyway. But for the last 6 years, again, I've been working solo, literally, almost 7 years now, with not around other artists, right? That's kind of because I have my nose down, I've been grinding out, I take care of my clients, I take care of my family, and I'm just trying to make a living at this point, I would love to get into something where you've got a like-minded artist that you can share a shop with and really go try to capture that old way again. That's where I'd like to go. That's where I'd like to end. We talk about this, getting an old school shop downtown, sitting outside having an espresso in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, old paisans style, or
Yeah.
and enjoy the people you're working with.
You want it to be like a proper, like, you know, the term social club gets pushed around a lot in our industry, and I don't think any I've never been to a shop that I consider
Actually
to be a proper, proper social club where I felt like I could just go and hang out like we did back in the day. Like when I worked at Cliffs, when I worked at Lotus, we had people come and just hang out. We had these two old guys at Lotus that I met originally at Cliffs, but they followed us over to Lotus, and there was this guy named Johnny Fever and Big Jim. One Big Jim was an old biker dude. Johnny was a custodian in high school. That motherfucker was covered from I shouldn't say it wasn't through his throat, but from neck to his fucking wrists. Anything he'd cover was fucking tattooed, and several times. Nicest fucking guys in the fucking world. Those guys would meet at our shop 3-4 nights a week. They'd go across the street to fucking 7-Eleven. They'd get themselves a fucking cup of coffee, and they'd come walking back and just hang out and talk. First time I'd seen a Jack Rudy piece live was on Johnny Fever, and it was fucking gorgeous. You know what I mean? And the best part was, at that time, it was like fucking 15 years old, 18 years old, and I got to see the photos of what the tattoo looked like when it was first done. Because Johnny had a fucking book of all the pictures, all the tattoos he'd ever gotten. So I got to see them healed anywhere between 10 and 15 years later, 18 years later, and see them, you know, straight up. That's about as close as being into a tattoo social club that I've ever been personally, because these guys literally came down just to hang.
Well, so are you finding getting into this next chapter of your life, your tattoo career, are you okay with just doing that? Like, say you and I found a spot, and we've talked about ideas, what we like to do, and we could find a spot where we're both geographically in a location we can deal with. Right? Yeah. Would you be totally cool just being that old timer that just kind of tattooed off into the sunset without being any limelight, without being part of the mix, without even traveling much, or traveling just to see friends more so than trying to be part of the tattoo cutting edge, moving things forward, or holding on to what the past was so that you can teach the younger generation what things used to be to pass the torch? At this point, are you almost ready to do that? Because I am. Now again, I never reached the levels of popularity. Like I mean, I was asked to do. I went on one interview when all those tattoo shows started going for the Hart and Huntington thing, and someone got a hold of me, and I remember I had to do like a little video recording, and I went and talked to some ladies, producer for an interview, and then the whole thing fizzled after that, you know. But I never did, you know, any of those shows. I mean, you even asked me, you should do this because I'm kind of like a.
You're a character, like
you mentioned more like with the work. I didn't have one particular style. I mean, I kind of lean more new school, obviously. Yeah. But I was raised around a lot of black and gray, you know, California West Coast style. So I saw Corey do the work, Jack do his work. But I came up in a shop where you had to be able to mimic a lot of styles. That was a tattoo shop.
Street shop.
If somebody wanted that, you had to be able to do that. If somebody wanted a portrait, you do a portrait. If someone wanted a flower, you do a flower. If someone wanted kind of leaning more realism, you do that. If you want to do more traditional, you got to be able to do that. And I still do that. My entire career, have been able to do that. Hopefully, I've added a little of my touch to things, and other people come to me and say, "Oh, I know you did that because of this, and this." Yeah. And your work gets recognized locally. For me, it was more local, you know. But I never reached those levels of popularity. I was never on the television. I had the magazine spreads, you know, earlier, you know, decade ago or more. But I'm okay with it because to me, I've gotten past the ego thing of wanting to be something. Because everybody wants to put their little mark on their industry and be. For me, it wasn't about popularity. It was about getting respect from my peers.
Of course, yeah.
And that's the most important thing. That's why I started traveling. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to get my name known amongst other artists.
Right, exactly.
I didn't care about television. Well, it wasn't happening at the time.
Right.
You know, but later, you can get caught up in that when it starts happening. Like, shit, I don't want to get left behind. I'm going to have to do this if I want to stay afloat. You know, and I think everybody, when they get into that kind of, I don't want to say peak of their career, but where they're established and they're ready for something new, and you've got to kind of be, you get wrapped up into the buzz of what's happening next, and you can get caught up, your ego can get caught up in that stuff too. But for me, it's all about, I want to earn enough to where the bills are getting paid and I got a little gravy to have some fun in life. But I want to be around people that I care about and who are like-minded. And you don't mind spending the day with, even when you're not working.
No, most certainly.
And so you're going to the shop early,
dude,
to have an espresso, or you're staying out late to have a whiskey. You know,
that's exactly what my hope is with the shop now. I'm not looking for fame. I don't travel around. I mean, I never was looking for fame. I got fortunate to get into the business with a style at a time that wasn't really a thing. That what I did, the color work that I did, wasn't a thing. It got picked up in the magazines, and it blew the fuck up, and it helped. And that, from there, I started doing conventions, and then people start and I'm, not to mention the fact, I'm recognizable as fuck. At that time, I'm almost
talk about a character.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm like fucking almost 400 fucking pounds. I got 3 feet of fucking hair, and people are just kind of like, oh yeah, fucking Joe Capobianco, blah blah blah. It's hard to miss, you know.
Your hair was up there for a few years.
Yeah, that's fucking, unfortunately. We all get old. But yeah, man, like, my point now is, like, when I bitch and complain, I'm not bitching and complaining because I'm not famous. I'm bitching and complaining because I just want to do this. Like, I just want to be able to continue
not
to
so
work.
much leaning, maybe you misunderstood me. I'm not so much about leaning on fame, but on, are you comfortable with letting go? And the industry is going where it's going. I have nothing to do with that anymore.
At this point, dude, me bitching and complaining is more about reminiscing than it is about honest change. Like, I don't think there's anything I do or say, or anybody can do or say, that's going to change a goddamn thing. The individuals who can are the motherfuckers who own fucking Bishop, fucking FK, Eternal. Those are the guys with a moniker of power. Those are the guys with the moniker of power. We're just the fucking knuckleheads who are buying gear and fucking trying to get by. That's the thing that's the biggest complaint I've ever made, has been these motherfuckers made, and again, I say motherfuckers, and I don't mean to call you motherfuckers, but you motherfuckers, you guys made millions off of this business. Whether it be because you sold your business, you sold the rights to your companies to these big corporations, whatever. You made millions. Those corporations made millions. And they haven't, in my opinion, I've not seen it, maybe I'm mistaken, but not a dime has gone back. And that's my problem with the world we live in today. It's not just this, and not just the United States, it's not just our business, it's the fucking world we live in today. It's gone mad corporate. And I don't mean to sound political, but it's the God's honest truth. Well, it's sucking the soul.
Well, that's not even political, that's just economics, man.
But to me, it's sucking the soul out of the craft. It's just
the world,
and that's what frightens the fuck out of me. And this is not because I'm not as busy as I want. I mean, it is because I'm not as busy as I once was. But the fact is, nobody cares, and that bums me the fuck out. Me the fuck out. So yes, I would have no problem kicking back, and just as long as I stayed busy enough, I would be fucking fine with that.
Yeah.
And be able to travel, do these things. Like, I mean, dude, I did the podcast because I want other people to know the people that I know. I want to go out and meet new people and get to experience those people. Reminisce old times. Talk about new things. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the whole point of this. And maybe learn. You know, and I can honestly say, having done the podcast for as long as for the past year, almost the past year, I've picked up a lot.
Well, and the cool thing about what you're doing too is, even if it changes nobody's minds, you're documenting a little bit of part of the history of the tattoo industry, and your experiences, the people that you talk to, their experiences, and it's a history book at the very least. You know, you're getting something, out of that, and that's. Even if no one ever, makes any money, you don't make a dime off of this.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any money. There's no money to be made.
It's kind of cool to have it documented. You know?
And that's exactly it, dude. Like when I did the TV show, in a million years, if you had told me I was going to be on a TV show, I would have been like, you're out of your fucking mind. And I did that. You know what I mean? If you had told me as a kid from Long Island that I was going to travel the fucking globe doing tattoos, I'd have been like, you're out of your fucking mind. So, I mean, I take everything in stride. You know what I mean? People can look at me as being an egomaniac. It's not the case. I mean, don't get me wrong. After you've gotten used to living a certain lifestyle, of course you want to continue that lifestyle. You don't want to be forgotten. And it's not even a matter of being forgotten. I just don't want to not be able to work. Like, people act like it's like, oh, what the fuck? You gotta be famous. And I'm like, no, man. I just want to go into work. I want to be able to tattoo every fucking day. That's it. I mean, like, I'm not turning work away. I'm fucking doing whatever comes into my shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I've had people make shitty comments about how the fact that, like, oh, you should just shut the fuck up and figure it out. Figure it out. Like, what do you think I'm trying to do? Like, literally, people have made comments about, like, I mean, I'm not going to name who it was, but they're just like, oh, you need to stop trying to, you know, rationalize where your career went. Figure it out. Like, dude, you know, fuck off. Like, that's not what this is about. The idea is I want to continue to make a living. If you sell cars for a living and you want to continue to sell cars, you figure out how to sell a car. You're right. But you don't fucking walk away from it because you throw your hands up. You know what I mean? Or act like there's something in your power that you can make happen. You know? And keep in mind, it's not just me that feels this way. It's a lot of fucking people in this business right now. You know? So that's a thing where...
Do you think that this... Because for some people, I guess they're not feeling a little bit of a slow period the last year or so, a couple years, right? Some people are not feeling it, but a lot of people are. I've seen many shops close down over the last couple years that have been there for decades.
Yeah.
And now the COVID thing had something to do with some of that, some of them. But besides that, whether it's economics or we didn't touch on this, a couple of months ago we had a conversation about it's like the perfect storm for guys that of our era of tattooers. You're getting older, so there's that. The economy's not good, so there's that. There's a world of events happening that are just chaotic, so nobody knows what the hell's going on. And then you've got the exploitation of the tattoo industry. So there's that with the television shows and everything that's happened since then, 15 years ago, and is still happening, lingering, you know. It's kind of a perfect storm for people of our era who aren't really established with the shop's not been there 30 years already or whatever. And it's a walk and street type shop in a touristy area. Yeah. I think is always going to do all right. But if people our age are talking about a slow period, like I mean, I've even said it myself, like this last year was probably the worst year I've had in 30 years.
Same here.
Economically.
Same here.
And we've gone through some dips, but it's a short dip and it comes back up. And but if I go back and look at the books that I didn't keep half the time, I know that last year was probably the slowest year for me in 30 years. Yeah. And I've heard other artists that are of our era say the same thing. And I think it's a combination of things. It's what I just talked about. Some of it is, we talked about this before, that most clients want to get tattooed by their peers. Yeah. And as you get older, you're not, you can't fake that anymore. You don't have anything in common. You're talking about almost a generation.
Oh, yeah. And, dude, we're at a point now, we're generations ahead of the people that are getting tattooed right now.
And the majority don't understand where we're coming from anymore. Now, there's a handful that still get it. I had some, 19-year-old kids in here the other day. Kids. That's how you know you're getting old. Yeah. Right? When you guys in their 20s and you're calling them kids,
But it's the truth.
Yeah. And they totally, I was actually surprised. Like, man, these cats, they know what's up, and they appreciate the old timer that you're almost becoming.
Yeah, well, there are people that are going to see the light through the fog. You know what I mean? They're gonna get the idea that this is something that I should keep my eyes and ears open or being around. You know what I mean? Because there's something to be learned here.
But in regards to slowing down, clientele-wise or business-wise, it's part of the economy. It's part of the world's crazy. It's part of the tattoo oversaturation of artists. There's a zillion artists out there now where compared to, in the city of Upland, there's 8 or 9 shops in Upland. When I started tattooing, there was 8 or 9 shops in all of Southern California.
I was going to say in California,
other than Hollywood, but all the outside of LA.
Things are.
What is going on?
Yeah, things are completely oversaturated.
Times 8, 9 artists per shop or whatever, But some of it has to do with the fact that there's a generation gap now, and we don't relate to the youngsters, and they don't relate to us. But we're also, like we talked about this, we're not the legendary old timer yet either. I don't think.
No,
we're 15 years from that. I think you get into your mid 60s or something, and then maybe you could be the crotchety old bastard. We gotta go see Joe and Obie. Those guys been around forever. Just go get tattoos so you hear the stories. We're not quite there yet.
Right.
So we're kind of in an in between.
We're at a point. I think the scary part about what you just said, the difference between, okay, let's look way back, and we'll go to Stanley and Walter Moskowitz. We'll go to the guys in New York. We'll go to Coney Island Freddie. We'll go to fucking, Philadelphia Eddie. You know, you go to these guys that are characters. Now, their legacy wasn't necessarily the artwork they left behind, the marks they left. You know what I mean? Like, their legacy was the fact that they were doing it way back when. Yeah. Okay. Now let's go. These lists are ridiculously, stupidly short, and there's a lot to be learned from a lot of these old school guys that I'm not mentioning. But now we go to like guys like Jack Rudy. Go to guys like fucking Corey for that matter. Myself to a small degree. You know what I mean? Not nearly like those guys. But comparing myself to them in a moment. Those guys have left such a fucking indelible mark on this fucking trade. Yeah. Freddie Negretti, between the flash that they created, the styles in which they created, the T-shirts, the merchandise, the artwork overall, just the impression they left as characters. That's fucking huge. Now, go to my generation, which is like, I'm like this weird redheaded stepchild of like Paul Booth, Guy Aitchison, Marcus Pacheco. Those are the guys that I came up admiring because they were literally just a couple of years before me. They've left this indelible mark on the business with what they've left behind on the skin, on paper, on whatever. I've always tried to do that. I've always tried to keep up and create me and leave my mark, not just on the skin, but on paper and books and whatever. That's where it gets a little frightening because you sit back and I'm like, did I do enough? Have I done enough to fucking make sure that I still have some kind of a mark that people are going to recognize and want me to continue in my old age? You know what I mean?
So that's important to you.
It's important to me in a sense. It's not a fame thing. And this is where people act like, oh, you're fucking nuts, your ego. Yeah. It's not my ego. It's just the idea that I want to
contribute to a trade that took care of you.
I want to contribute to the trade, of course, but I also just want to continue to know that people can see my work and go, oh yeah, I'm going to get tattooed by him because I've seen his stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's not me trying to, like, dude, me having a style that I dig on was not a matter of me creating a style that I wanted everybody to fucking love. That's just the way I work.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough for people to enjoy it and want to get tattooed by it. So yeah, I want people to recognize it, and I want them to continue to get tattooed. I don't think that's an ego. Well, I guess it is. Everything's ego.
Well, it is.
But it's not my intention for it to be ego. It's just that's how I know that you can get the work because people recognize it. Yeah. They recognize you for it, and they want to come to you for it. That's how I look at that scenario. So yes, I am happy to go off into the sunset and just chill and work, whatever. But the only way you can do that is that people recognize and continue to want to get tattooed. That's my thoughts on that.
Unless you're just a local flash street shop.
Yeah, but the unfortunate part of that is I'm not. Yeah. And the fact that we technically can be. You know, we have Flash on the walls. I have books of Flash. We have tons of shit that we've drawn over the years. But the fact is, it's like people aren't coming to us to go to the other shops.
Because we talked about this before, like where I want to end up. I wouldn't mind just doing all Flash, old school.
Oh, that'd be amazing, dude. But I think trying to talk people into that, you're trying to retrain people. And again, I'm not going to say those people aren't out there. That goes to
the full circle question I asked about. Do you think that the industry can go back full circle to where street shops are the norm? Flash
definitely not. Definitely not. I don't think that Flash is going to be the norm ever again. I think that the way people
not even for nostalgia's purpose, like the hipsters of today are all on vinyl records. And that's all we fucking do.
I get that, but that's still not the norm. That's not the norm. But what I mean by norm is,
but enough to support it.
Not everybody. Like if you, again, it's like anything else.
It would still be a niche.
It's still too much. Yeah. Like there's too much. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. There's shops out there that all they do is walk-ins every single day. I mean, I'm not going to say they don't exist, but they're few and far between. They're not the fucking norm, and that's how I understand
in a
the
touristy
question.
Type area.
Yeah, that's how I understand the question. Is like, is it the norm? Will it be the norm? No, I don't think it is. I think that's beyond us. And again, it's this. This is what's killed everything. The fucking phones. It's made everything entirely too attainable, entirely too fast to have, and visual overload. You know what I mean? Mental and visual overload.
And I think instant gratification.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're never going to go back from there. You know, from that. I don't think it's possible. I think there'll be niches, like of course, but I don't think it's ever going to be the norm. So on that horrible note,
we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, we are going to wrap this up. And is there anything in particular that you want to kind of like just touch on real quick? I'm going to put all of your information in the description. So anything like Instagram, however you want to be reached, whatever, it'll be in the description regardless. But is there anything you want to say before?
No, I mean we talked about way more than I was even anticipating, but I don't have any words of wisdom. I mean, I've been doing this 30 plus years. You'd think I'd have something to say other than what we just talked about, but I don't know where it's all going, and I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. From here forward, I'm just hoping, like you said, I have enough people that still want to get tattooed by me to where I can pay the bills. I'd love to do something like what we talked about, the old, bitch and shop. That's all old school. Maybe it'll happen one day, maybe it won't. But what we do off camera and what we do after the tattooing is done, that has huge value to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another thing which we didn't really touch on. We kind of a little bit with the dead bird tattoos and all that. What would you call them? The junk drawer tattoos.
Junk drawers.
But just the going out to the people that you meet in this industry by far outweighs anything else, any ego, any money that was made, the friendships that you deal with. And just going back to our conversation earlier about how we would not force each other, but make each other stay an extra day just to hang out because it was going to be another 6 months.
Because it was about friendship.
To see it, yeah.
It was about friendship.
And if anything, and if anything, that I hold higher value than even the artwork.
Yeah.
Or the business itself. Yeah. But if everybody can just take a breath, and the younger guys pay a little homage, do a little research, on your own time, to pay homage to the guys who came before you, it's going to help the industry going forward no matter what.
I agree.
And the old timers, stop being so fucking old crotchy about it. Allow the youngsters to come in and say, okay, let's work together on this shit, because it's important what we believed was important. It's important that you at least understand where it came from.
Exactly.
And that's how you can hope for in any walk of life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Passing the torch.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I really do.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man.
I'm glad you came out. Hey, everybody, thank you again. I really appreciate everything. Please like and subscribe. Spread the fucking word. This is Not For Nothing from California. I'll see you when I see you. Now let's get some fucking food.
Starting to sweat.